Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. Joining me as always, we got my guy Cody Saftic. You guys can find him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. And we are here propping you up for UFC 262, headlined by a vacant lightweight strap title fight between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. Very, very fun matchup. Not to mention a fire matchup in the co-main event between Tony Ferguson and Beneil Dariush. Cannot wait to break this down with my guy Cody. Not to mention we got red corner and blue corner thing going on right here. So I'm assuming that we got some differing opinions, and we'll see how that goes with the breakdowns. Cody, how excited are you for this pay-per-view? Not to mention we did lose Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. Personally, I wasn't the super most stoked about that fight, but it is less firepower and less star power for this weekend. Overall, how do you feel about this card?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really care too much for that fight, but you got two big name opponents, so it was going to be good. It's a pay-per-view. You're trying to get people to buy the pay-per-view. You want them to spend their money. You need big matchups. But as far as an entertainment standpoint, I think this card is absolutely loaded top to bottom. As far as a card that you feel good from a betting standpoint, I like this card as well. So I think there's a lot you can get excited about. As far as, it's a title fight, but it's a vacant title, and no one's the real champ. Habib's the real champ, right? These guys are playing second fiddle. But again, this is the Violence Award. This card is ram jam packed with potential fight of the night winners from the prelims all the way to the main event. So super excited to be getting at it.
Last thing I'll say before we actually jump into this, you missing your boy Paul yet, or are you guys getting familiar over the Skype and Zoom stuff?
Yeah, it's always going to be different, man. I mean, it's different seeing one of your best friends that you've seen the last 10 years. But yeah, it's cool that the UFC has an event every week. So it's one of those things where you don't have to be like, oh man, I haven't talked to Paul in a couple of weeks. I'll shoot him a text. It's like, you're going to just talk to him all the time. So I feel bad because Book of Beatdown got blown up. But the one advantage on the prop side of things is last week. This happens. I don't know if you've noticed this, but every time we do the show, one of the plays for the most part gets falls off. Sure. So Linz and Rothwell finds off. I always end up with like two of the plays. And then thankfully we got two hits. Magny and Jeff Neal goes the distance. And then as well Harris by submission hitting at plus 165. Apparently like ballooned to 250. A lot of people were messaging me that it had gone that way and they got an even better price tag. So again, this is another another card where you'll see there's not a whole lot of underdogs on this card. There's a ton of 50-50 fights. There's a ton of even money plays. There's a ton of these minus 110, minus 120s. But I see a lot of plus money on the prop side of things. So excited. Unfortunately for Paul and I, you're dealing with 50-50 fights and big favorites. But I do miss the guy as I always will.
For sure. No, I definitely got to get the guy on my Friday show at one point too, because I love chopping it up with him too, even in the DMs. In regards to you saying that there's a lot of close fights on this card, you're not wrong, man. I believe the last time I counted, there's about 8 fighters that were minus 150 or better. Just lets you know how closely lined these fights are. And I am completely puzzled with this card. I'm hoping you can give me some clarity in regards to it, but I do have some certain spots that I feel more comfortable with than other spots, but we'll see how we can discuss the rest of the card. All right. Before we get into it, as I always want to remind you guys, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, support the channel as always. Me and Cody love doing this show on a week-to-week basis for you guys, and that is obviously the best way that you guys can show your support. So let's not waste any further time. Let's get into the first fight on the card. We got Christos Giagos going up against the returning Sean Soriano. Now, Christos Giagos was originally scheduled to fight Joel Alvarez. Alvarez pulls out, in steps Soriano on somewhat short notice. And last time Soriano was in the UFC, he had a very tough stretch. 0-3 in the UFC, takes 2 of those fights on short notice, so that doesn't really help him out. Not to mention, stylistically speaking, very horrible matchups for him, considering he had Tatsuya Kawajiri, Chaz Skelly, and Charles Rosa to go up with, and a lot of those guys were able to exploit his grappling deficiencies. I'm not sure how much he's been able to work on it in that amount of time since leaving the UFC the first time, but obviously he's working a lot with Gilbert Burns down there at Sanford MMA, trying to really round out his game. He seems to be one of the coaching staff guys now too, right? Holding pads for the guys, cornering guys. So he's really investing himself in that team, which is great to see. But in terms of a mixed martial arts fighter, I still don't know how much he brings to the table. The guy has good hands. The guy has good boxing. But I still think that he's going to have deficiencies when it comes to the grappling realm. And I do think that we'll see Giagos exploit those in the first 2 rounds. The tricky part here is Giagos' gas tank seems to fall off a cliff after that second round, and that's where things get a little bit shaky. And I'm a little bit concerned as to, picking the minus 200, minus 210 favorite here in Giagos, especially with the cardio issues that he has later in fights. Ultimately, I do think he grinds it out. I think Giagos ends up getting a decision victory here. The line on that plus 115, not too shabby. If you want to get cheeky with it, I like getting cheeky with it. Soriano to win in round 3 is plus 1900. But I will say this. The last fight that Soriano did lose was to Bruce Boynton, where he came in as a minus 520 favorite, ends up pretty much gassing out after that first round, and then giving up his back in the second round and getting choked out. If there is still another high-level pace fight this time around with Christos Giagos, with him struggling to get back to his feet, with him using all of his energy just to defend, we could potentially see Soriano have a gas tank dump, right? So I'm not ruling that out either, but Giagos' gas tank issues are way more clear than Soriano's gas tank issues, which is why I'm a little bit concerned about it. In terms of her prop, though, I'm going with the overs. I'd be surprised if we see an early finish here. I'm going to go with Giagos by decision plus 115, like I'm saying, and the over minus 2.5, over 2.5 is minus 210. A little bit chalky. I'd rather take a decision prop on Giagos. Who do you got in this one? You think Soriano finishes him late?
Yeah, if styles make fights, then I got to go with Christos Giagos. His power wrestling style is just big, physical, able to command a lot of just that activity, right? That work rate. Does he gas himself out? Yes, but he's one of these guys that just completely exhausts himself on the swim there, that he leaves nothing for the swim back. A lot of these fights do go to the distance, but man, in the second round, he just absolutely seems shaky. That last fight with Carlton Minus, it should have been an absolute walk in the park for him. He dominates the first round, 10-8, very easy. Comes close to submitting him a couple times, but just pure domination. But in the second round, right away in the second round, you just see from the body language, you start seeing the takedowns are desperation takedowns. In the third round, he's completely tired, but the takedowns are just so easy against Carlton Minus. They come so easy all the time. They're effortless that he doesn't really have to dig deep. And Minus, meanwhile, he's completely gassed himself. A fighter that was coming out of the Alaska regional scene, probably wasn't prepared for a 15-minute grind fest and grappling match, and that's what Giagos brought to the table. But that's kind of what Giagos brings to the table every time out. I mean, we know what we're going to get out of him, but you don't have to question about questionable ring IQ. Like, he plays to his strengths. When he first came to the UFC, he was a guy that was getting grappled, but as time's gone on, they've given him these really low to middle level opponents, and he's able to kind of go out there and exploit them. With Sean Soriano, we've seen him in the UFC already, 0-3 as you mentioned, but when he first cracked into the scene, he was a highly touted prospect.
Oh, yeah.
Undefeated, 9-0, trained with Henry Hoof and the Black Zillions. Like you talk about, Gilbert Burns been the guy's jiu-jitsu coach for a long time. They got Rumble Johnson in the gym. They got Jorge Santiago in the gym. They got Jay-Z's Calvacante. They got Michael Johnson. They got all these great guys in the gym at the time. And he comes in his UFC debut. He takes on Tatsuya Kawajiri, an absolute legend of the sport, right? Especially for Japanese MMA. And he's an even money play against Kawajiri in his debut. That's how much faith not only did the UFC have in him giving them the fight, but odds makers and fans alike. But it's like, dude, same shit. He just gives up his back, and when he gives up his back, he gets submitted. He's a world kickboxing champion, right? He's a guy that they've said for a long time in the gym, he's one of the better kickboxers in the gym. He's one of the better strikers in the gym. But very similar to Guto Inocencio, who's also out of the Black Zillions, one fantastic striker. Everyone raves about his striking in the gym. Only guy in the gym that's out there sparring Tyrone Spong on a regular basis, right? But as far as MMA goes, like terrible. Not able to make that transition. And Henry Hoof, as great of a coach as he is he the guy that's going to give you these grappling skills? No, he turns great grapplers into great strikers. I just don't know that it's like roles reversed here. So Soriano, we already seen him in the UFC, 0-3, that was his problem. And all the time that's elapsed since then, it's still been his problem. Like you mentioned the Bruce Boynton fight. Boynton's 15-11. He's the quintessential journeyman of the and it's just the same shit, man. He comes in as a big favorite, he gets taken down, he gets submitted. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, but against Noah Lahad, again, UFC veteran, former AKA jiu-jitsu coach, just like doesn't have a wrestling game and cannot take a punch. The other fights, it's like you match him up against a striker, he'll be able to deliver some magic. He'll be able to maybe have a highlight reel. But these wrestlers and grapplers, they have him time and time again. So Giagos' style is enough to warrant that he'll probably get the job done. What I'm looking at, though, is that when you mentioned Sean Soriano third round, because Giagos has a bad gas tank, I'm almost thinking it might be like reversed, really. So Sean Soriano is the one taking the fight on short notice, not Giagos. Giagos against Carlton Minus, do you remember this? Carlton Minus was going to fight Rick Glenn. And then like 2 days before the fight, Christos Giagos stepped in. So it was understandable to me that at that kind of pace that he tired after 2. Mind you, he always gasses when he has full camps. Doesn't really seem to matter. But I'll give him a pass on the last one, where Soriano's been gassing in full camps. So now that he's the one coming in a short notice versus a full camp, Christos Giagos, I think the takedowns are there. I think they work. I think he's able to take him down. I think he's able to grind him into some deeper waters. I don't love this play. I don't love this fight on a prop standpoint. But like you said, getting dicey, shaking it up a little bit, maybe a third round Soriano play. I just looked at that submission prop for Christos Giagos at plus 575. Now bear with me on this one. Giagos actually has not submitted an opponent in the last 6 years. However, he has submitted an opponent in the UFC, Yohil de Oliveira, back in the day. But still, you look at his list of opponents, right? I mean, not exactly guys that submissions are going to present themselves against. Against Minus, he was pursuing the takedowns, but then he started getting tired and he abandoned the game plan altogether. It's not so much Giagos' submission game that I'm banking on. It's Soriano's inability to stop the submissions, right? Once he gets taken down, he scrambles and he gives up his back. Once he gives up his back, guys usually put in the hooks, and he doesn't particularly hand fight all that well, which leads to him getting a rear naked choke. Giagos, matter of fact, last submission on his record, again 6 years ago, in the UFC against Oliveira, and it is a rear naked choke. You saw him threaten the arm triangle choke against Carlton Minus. You see that there is a submission game there. It's whether or not he's going to go with it. And at plus 575, I'm willing to give it a chance. So, yeah, I wanted the over. It is juiced. You can't bet that, right? I wanted potentially fight goes the distance, but then I think both guys got a suspect gas tank. If Giagos is tired and can't take him down in the third, he'd get knocked out. If Soriano's tired and he can't stop these takedowns, he could get submitted. So I don't really love the value on the decision prop. Passed on that. Giagos is the money line play, but what do you take him by decision? Like you mentioned, that's probably the smart side of things. But in my gut, I think, subs on the table. So maybe you go Giagos by decision and a small stab at by submission. But besides that, yeah, not super confident on like a good value prop for this fight.
Yeah, again, this is only the first fight on the card, and we're still a little bit skeptical in terms of like which prop we should be going with, and that should tell you how the rest of the stream should probably go. But yeah, I'm absolutely there with you. I could see that submission. I do like that angle, especially considering the odds that they're currently at. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Kevin Aguilar going up against Tucker Lutz, and I like me some Lutz in this spot. I'm understanding why he is starting to stretch out as the slightly bigger favorite, only minus 120. The line was closer to a pick 'em earlier in the week, but I think he brings a little bit more to the table in terms of, a little bit more diversity with the strike, slightly better movement compared to Kevin Aguilar. I was surprised the guy was 17-1 coming into the UFC, given the way that he fights. It's just like walk down center line, try to knock your head off, a lot of boxing oriented, not much kicking, not much grappling. It only seems like he gets engaged in the grappling when his opponent wants to initiate the grappling sequences, and he's just happy to just walk you down and try to knock your head off. He has some good takedown defense, don't get me wrong. The way he was able to stuff the takedowns of Enrique Barzola and absolutely torch him on the feet was very impressive. But we've seen people kind of figure him out at this point. Say what you want about the Charles Rosa fight. I thought Charles Rosa definitely did deserve to win that fight. But that just goes to show when people have more on the table to offer, I think Kevin Aguilar runs into some trouble. I'm not going to say he's chinny because he got knocked out by Zubair Tukhugov, so I'm not sure if Tucker Lutz will actually be able to find that chin, but I do like Tucker Lutz here to actually go out there and put together a solid game plan over 15 minutes. Be the more active guy in the striking, throw more different strikes, be more versatile with your approach. If you want to, change levels every now and then, try to get that high school wrestling back out of your pocket and see if you can get Kevin Aguilar to the ground. I highly doubt that's going to be super successful, but at least that keeps Kevin Aguilar thinking, keeps him on his toes, and allows Tucker Lutz to really open up. I am on the Lutz side. I'm a little bit skeptical about backing guys that are coming right off the Contender Series, but I think that this is a perfectly styled matchup for both guys to show off good things, but I think ultimately it's going to be Lutz that ends up coming on the winning side. I was kind of surprised to see the Lutz decision line at plus 190. But then again, he does get finishes, right? He is a finisher. I do believe Aguilar is quite durable. So I do think the decision prop's actually going to hit here. So one of my favorite prop spots on this card, again, very low confidence on a lot of these spots, but I do think Lutz by decision plus 190 is not too bad. I see it racking up minutes. I see it racking up rounds. I see it mainly being a striking matchup, but both guys are quite durable. And the last thing I'll say about Tucker Lutz, slight cardio issues. We can be honest about that, right? Like in his Contender Series fights, you see him kind of slowing down later in the fights, not really having the output that he had earlier in the fight. But I don't know if Aguilar is truly going to make him work as much as Sherrard Blackledge did or the other guy, Chase Gibson, that he fought on the Contender Series. So that's why I feel a little bit more comfortable with Lutz here. So I'll go Lutz plus 190 on the decision prop. Talk me down. Is Kevin Aguilar actually live here, or am I too high on Lutz?
Yeah, I honestly think he is live here. I took the coward's way and just took fight goes the distance, minus 195. Not a very great price tag now, is it? But I kind of see where your angle is. I think that a lot of people give Aguilar shit because he got knocked out twice, but it's like, high-level competition, man. Zubair Tukhugov, not really known for his knockout power, but still, I mean, he's elite-level competitor. And when you look at Dan Ige, he's got some of the fastest hands in the division. Again, you're going to give him a couple passes on those fights. Outside of that, he was known for getting in wars. He was known for putting his chin on full display. He was known for kind of brawling a little too much in the pocket with guys. And, especially in, like, his LFA days, like, back in the regional scene before he came to the UFC, he would just, he was in these very entertaining fight of the night worthy scraps. Did that take a little too too much out of him? Like, is he having chin issues? The fact that Charles Rosa just outstruck him just by, being the quicker guy off his back foot, better volume, a lot faster than him, beat him to the punch routinely. And a lot of those punches stung him and hurt him. Didn't drop him, didn't knock him down like Zubair Tukhugov and Dan Ige did. But still, it's like, now we've seen the limitations of where Kevin Aguilar is at. But with Tucker Lutz, like, I think that he's got limitations as well. He's only 26 years old. Figures that he'll probably continue to get better. I think he's still training out of Maryland. I don't know how far his current situation is going to take him. But here's my issue with him. So he's like an 8-0 undefeated amateur, right? Absolutely stud as an amateur, and then gets knocked out in his debut, his professional debut. So when we talk about Aguilar having chin issues, Tucker Lutz may also have chin issues, because after he gets knocked out in his debut, he fights a 1-1, 3-4, 3-0, not bad there, I guess, 6-7, 12-5, 3-14, 8-11, 6-3, 2-2. Then he gets a Contender Series. Now he comes on Contender Series, and your boy all over him. He's a minus 370 favorite over Chase Gibson. But hey, I'm gonna parlay him up. He's undefeated amateur, once beaten as a pro, long winning streak, looks the part, like you mentioned, high school wrestling background. Striking's improved a lot. Perfect. I'm all over on Chase Gibson. And man, he struggles mightily over Chase Gibson. Wins the first round, again, looks really good in the first round. But as he starts to slow in the second, he becomes very hittable. This is not a guy that moves his head particularly off the center line. And I think that's what maybe gives him chin issues. He's hittable. So like you saw in his pro debut, he does get knocked out. But then he fights an entire run of guys that just aren't going to be there to deliver the blow. So when he gets Chase Gibson, he's up the first 2 rounds. I don't feel great about it. I know I won the first. The second, I'm pretty sure I won, but closer than I'd like it to be. And then the third round, he arguably loses the third round, gives up his back. Gibson's all over him. So now he wins the fight, cashes a 370 ticket, like it's nothing there. But he was actually a plus 155 underdog to Blekage 2 months later. UFC doesn't give him a contract. They do bring him back. But now he's a plus 1. He goes from a 370 favorite, wins, and he's a 155 underdog. Like, not a good looking performance. And then the Blekage fight, he really relies on his wrestling a lot more in that fight. Against Gibson, he was mostly just looking to strike. But when it didn't yield the knockout result and he tired, that's when he had problems. In this fight, he's not looking to go down that path. He uses his wrestling. He has very low output, but he secures the positions he needs. He gets the victory. So now you're jumping into the UFC, but you're jumping in the UFC officially as a guy making his debut, like you mentioned, taking on a 6-fight UFC veteran. Not only is this 6-fight UFC veteran, he's got a win over the Ultimate Fighter Latin America champion Enrique Barzola, as you mentioned. He's fought the likes of Zubair Tukhugov. He's fought the likes of Dan Ige. He stuffed takedowns off Barzola. He stuffed 3 of 4 takedowns against Dan Ige. His takedown defense is not that bad. He shows 87% throughout 6 UFC fights. But his striking's pretty decent. He does have probably a technical boxing advantage. He does have some serious power in his hands as well. What he needs to do is get Lutz into the second or third round, and when Lutz starts to tire, he needs to find the chin and put it on him. Now, if these guys are both going to rely on their chins, I'm not confident on either side. And we're looking at a bit of decision prop. This is going to be a sweat. This could be fight of the night. Remember at the top of the show, I said there's going to be multiple potential fight of the nights. I think this is going to be a barn burner. And both guys need for their chins to check up, realistically. So I like this fight from an entertainment standpoint. From a betting standpoint, my best prop was fight goes the distance at minus 195, and I don't feel great about that. But I'm having a hard time gauging who's going to be the definitive winner. You've got Lutz. I understand where you're coming from in that, but Aguilar's got all the experience, right? Fought the better opposition, probably has a slight boxing advantage. Cardio's comparable, but he's been into those deeper waters. If he chin checks this kid, then everyone's going to be like, oh shit, you know what? In hindsight, who's Tucker Lutz ever fought? Yeah. Whereas with Aguilar, it's like, every guy he's fought on his list. Even Charles Rosa, who people like to shit on, these are all veterans of the game. These are all guys that have been around. Even his debut, same thing, So I'm kind of giving him that veteran lean ever so slightly. And to your point, gun to my head, we always talk about this. It's like, don't puss out, make a pick. You mentioned the fact that it was plus 190 or plus 185, the decision prop for Lutz. It's plus 200 decision prop for Aguilar. So I kind of lean that way if I had to pick a straight up side of it. I agree with you in your assessment. It does go to the decision. I think it's a nail biter. I think it's greasy. I think both guys are stunned and wobble, but I do think it goes 15. And I'm thinking Aguilar is going to be on the other end of it. But again, this one's a close fight to call. Odds makers are right on it. This card's very close fights to call.
I'm fully expecting us to be on a lot of opposite sides throughout this.
Red and blue, baby.
So, yeah, exactly. So perfect timing for us to be dressed as the way we are. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. I think we should kind of be on the same side here. We got Gina Mazany going up against Priscilla Cachoeira. Gina Mazany, would you ever believe me 2 years ago if I told you that she would be one of the biggest favorites on a UFC pay-per-view card? Probably not. She's going up against Priscilla Cachoeira here as a -210 favorite. Plus 175-ish is the return here on Priscilla Cachoeira. Now, when I first looked over this card pre-taped, didn't even bother researching or anything like that, I was embarrassed and shocked with myself to think that Gina Mazany was the safest spot on this card. I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Let me splash some cold water in my face. Let me slap myself a couple times. And I still felt the same way. Then I start to run the tape, and then you see how hittable Gina Mazany is, especially against a girl like Rachel Ostovich, who doesn't have much to offer on the feet. But if you get hit by Priscilla Cachoeira with those same types of punches, things can get shaky very quickly. Gina Mazany, we've seen in the past when she gets cracked with a nice shot, she likes to do that shell-up offense where she just lets her opponents go off on her. And I could definitely see that here with Priscilla Cachoeira, who does the same exact thing. However, I will buy into the James Krause narrative a little bit with Gina Mazany, right? She looked the best we've ever seen her last time around, albeit against a girl that was 4-5, Rachel Ostovich, that night. I need to see a little bit more before I'm willing to part ways with my money at -210 for a girl like Gina Mazany. Let's distance herself from the past performances she had in the UFC, getting starched by Julia Avila, it starts by Macy Chiasson, and then, beating up 45-year-old Valerie Barney on the regional scene. You know what I mean? Like that was a bad win in terms of getting back into the UFC. It is what it is. But I don't mind what we saw from her last time around. Let's just see more of it before we trust her at chalk odds here. Now, Priscilla Cachoeira, she lives up to her nickname, the zombie girl, right? She just moves forward, throws a lot of winging hooks. There's no real technique to go with it, right? It's just, I'm going to try to knock your head into the fifth row, and that's really about it. Her cardio doesn't look the greatest, but she still does the zombie thing where, you take her down, she's going to buck you up, and she's going to try to get back to her feet. Once she gets back to her feet, she's going to march you down and try to land some big shots on you. I see Mazany taking her down time and time and time again. My only concern is we haven't really seen Cachoeira off of her back too much. And I'm completely writing out the Valentina Shevchenko fight. I'm not even going to take that into consideration here when I'm talking about Gina Mazany. And we saw her on the ground a little bit against Luana Carolina, but it just wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, Gina Mazany should be good enough to kind of hold Cachoeira down, because what's going to happen if Cachoeira keeps getting back to her feet and Gina Mazany has to deal with the striking of Cachoeira? Again, not the most technical, but definitely the more powerful striker, and that could definitely give some problems to Mazany here. Ultimately, I am going to go with Mazany. I do like her grapple-heavy style a little bit more. I hope she moves her head a little bit better than she did in the Ostovich fight. It is a very risky spot. I will say this. I feel more comfortable with Giagos than I do with Mazany. But Mazany by decision plus 100, not too shabby, as that is more than likely her path to victory. Does she finish Cachoeira? I'd be surprised. I think Cachoeira will continuously squirm enough on the ground where she doesn't give up a dominant position and get ground and pounded. I don't think she'll give up a submission either. She is a tough motherfucker, that is for sure. We saw her eat a clean head kick by Luana Carolina and keep chugging forward. So yeah, I expect this to go the full 15. I'll go Mazany, but just be very careful about that heavy power coming back your way from Priscilla Cachoeira. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, Paul Shaughnessy mentioned this week he was looking at Cachoeira by KO. It's like 6-1, right? And
why
again,
not?
Yeah, exactly, because it's the same thought process. Like she didn't come to the UFC with the nickname Zombie Girl. She's established the nickname Zombie Girl through her performances in the UFC, where Valentina Shevchenko, oh my God, like who even put this fight together? Gets thrashed, but shows some heart, shows some character. The Molly McCann fight gets thrashed, but has her eyes swollen up in the third round, like almost gets a stoppage victory out of it. The Luana Carolina fight, my God, just so unbelievably hittable. Gets dropped from that flush head kick and just keeps chugging along. She is super tough. And now 0-3. The UFC could release her, but she's showing so much heart. Let her fight the last fight of her deal, right? You always sign a 4-fight deal. Let her fight the last one. She goes out there and knocks out Shayna Dobson. Great. A year and a half ago now, but at least she was able to right the ship and get back in the win column. But is there enough out of there? I don't know. She's plodding. She's come forward. She's got that like classic shoot to box style. She's heavy on her feet, and she just likes to wing these big overhand hooks. If something lands clean on Gina Mazany, yeah, you mentioned, right? We've seen a Gina Mazany get hit and not react well at all. Macy Chiasson, like a minute and a half into the first round, hits her, just overwhelms her and puts her way against the cage, and then the Julia Avila fight where it's a knee to the body. Let me just play devil's advocate quick here. So Macy Chiasson won the Ultimate Fighter at 145 pounds. Fights routinely now 135 pounds, and is still big for the weight class. Is a brawler, does have some power. Okay, I give her a slight pass there. Julia Avila, she's a fringe top 15 contender in the division. She was a highly touted prospect before the Eubanks loss. Is somebody that does have some upside. Ran Division 1 track and field at the University of Notre Dame. Great athlete. And she takes that fight on like 4 days' notice at 135 pounds. In fact, her entire career, all of her losses are at 135 pounds. That last fight, it represented a lot of good things for Mazany. 1, getting in the win column, back in the win column, that's good. It's a confidence builder. 2, as you mentioned, she's with James Krause, Glory MMA and Fitness. That's huge, man. Her and Tim Elliott were hanging on the strip for far too long. They get back with James Krause. You see how these fighters show up in shape. You see how they got that third round James Krause, go out there, give it their all in making improvements. He's working with a lot of mid-level athletes. He's working with a lot of these fringe top 20, top 25, top 30 level of athletes. And he's turned them into fighters that can go out there and get the win. It's all about game planning, right? But 3, it was the first fight down at 125 pounds. Now, this girl on the Instas looked shredded. It looked like, damn, she's taking her strength and conditioning very seriously. She's going to show up in this fight in very good shape. And you see that performance, the 7 takedowns. Mind you, it did look like she was gassing out.
Oh, yeah.
It did look like she was getting certainly very tired in there. And Rachel Ostovich not in a position to take advantage. Cachoeira, if she is in a position to take advantage, can stuff a couple of those later in the fight takedowns, keep this fight standing, and put it on her, then that's where that TKO prop becomes live. This is a good live betting standpoint as well, where you can see if Gina Mazany's tiring, because Gina certainly should win the first round, and a half. And then as a big plus money tag, you could maybe look at Cachoeira, but I think I'm really buying into the fact that she's in a better surrounding. She's at a better gym. She's got a lot more focused, attentive training. This is now her second fight with James Krause. This is her second fight at 125 pounds. I expect her to come in, make weight, look good on the scales, and I expect her to go out there and get the grind on. That last fight with Rachel Ostovich, as much as it was like, I don't want to do this, she was a minus 185. I thought she was closer. I bet her at 2-1, as stupid as I am. But it was around that 2-1 range. And as much as none of us wanted to do it, it was like, this is the safe play on the card, isn't it? She should just grind her up against the cage and get it done, right? She does look good in good physical shape. Okay, we went with it. We took the play. We yielded the positive result. Did she get a little bit tired in there? Maybe, but it was a positive result. I'm hoping the exact same thing here. She needs to go out there, use her physicality, get Cachoeira up against the cage, grind her down into the mat, rinse and repeat for at least 2 of these rounds, and then survive. If you're looking for just, again, you want to play the safe route, the safe side of things, this fight's going the distance. The problem with this fight's going the distance is, it's just not, I mean, it's not the worst tag out there, but that Mazany by plus 100, Mazany by decision, same thing I believe that you ended up settling on. I agree that I think that's the most logical outcome for this fight. And that's the one that I'm going to side with as well. So Mazany, get her wrestling going. At worst case, I'm going to keep my eye on the live betting market, and I can always hedge out of it.
Hats off to Mazany, especially how she looked going into that third round against Ostovich, right? Like, you literally have James Krause slapping her and be like, hey, fucking look at me. Like she was just hunched over, huffing and puffing. Do you remember the fucking the Lena Landsberg fight where, like, in between rounds she was about to puke, like they had to get the bucket for her or something like that? Like, but I do believe she's gotten better conditioning. Obviously, that fight was at 135 pounds. Didn't seem to be caring about much about her physique at that time. But now working with James Krause, she has to be in better shape for sure.
Do you want to know something funny? So Gina Mazany's, she's a mother, right? So I'm sure that's got to cut into your training time. You know what I mean? Like, you're a full-time mom as well. So that's probably something that's hindered her in the past. But when I was in Las Vegas, Gina was a bartender. She was a bartender off the strip, right? This is before she got into the UFC, right when she got into the UFC. And that's what she was doing, right? She's living in Las Vegas. She's training at Extreme Couture. And her brother is Dirty Dave Mazany, right? Trains at Extreme Couture, MMA fighter as well. Fought Chris, Dixon back in the day, Ryan Dixon, and back in Canada, shout out. But anyways, he's like a 25-fight veteran. He's been around. And he was doing pro wrestling, and she was doing pro wrestling. She's bartending. She's a single mother. She's living in Las Vegas right off of the strip. It's like it was all destined to not go very well. She starts dating Tim Elliott. He's a fuck up, right? At the time. It's like his whole life is spiraling out of control. And I saw this interview the other day, Phil Baroni's on it, and they were like, oh, you should wrestle Dave Mazany. And he's like, I already did. I beat him. He goes, and I made out with his sister at the after party. And now it could be a lie, I don't know, right? But it's Phil Baroni. All I'm getting at is, like, it sounds like her shit wasn't lining up to be a professional athlete. But now you leave and you go to Kansas. What else is there to do in Kansas? Get in shape, train, take care of the kid. Tim seems like his career is coming back. He's actually looked at his last 2 fights. He looks the best when he's with James Krause in Kansas. I'm expecting her to do the same thing. She's still only 32. Not young, not old. Still some good fights in front of her. Still some improvements to be made. I'm banking on it. But it's women's MMA, so hopefully I'm not eating shitty apple pie this week.
I hope not. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Speaking of women's MMA, we got Andrea Lee going up against Antonina Shevchenko. And talk about line movement on this fight, right? You got Antonina Shevchenko open up at a -195. Now she's all the way down to -125. Been seeing nothing but Andrea Lee love on the Twitter feeds throughout the week. And I kind of understand it in terms of a value perspective if people are hitting her at +140, +150, and above that. But the closer line that this fight gets, I still end up leaning on the Antonina Shevchenko side. I think she's the much better striker. Obviously, she might not be able to match the volume of Andrea Lee, what could end up being the decision maker. But I do think that we see Shevchenko land the better shots, land the better strikes, and probably dictate the pace on the feet. The concern here, obviously, with Shevchenko is her ground game, right? Doesn't look the greatest. Obviously, gets controlled and worked by Katlyn Chookagian in a way that we've never seen Katlyn Chookagian fight in the past. And then obviously going out there and getting crushed by Shevchenko as well. It was just a Chookagian fight for Shevchenko. But still, I expect this fight to play out in the striking realm, and if that's the case, I do think that we'll see the better striking exchanges from the side of Shevchenko here. It's just the volume that ever so slightly does mess me up. Andrea Lee, right? 3-fight losing streak right now. Not to mention she probably deserved to at least win 2 of those. I thought for sure she deserved to win the Lauren Murphy fight. Get screwed in her own backyard, but then again, Lauren Murphy is also from Texas, so I guess you can't really call backyard or hometown robbery or anything like that. People think the Texas judges are going to be on some shit this weekend, and they think if it's going to end up being a close fight, that the judges are end up going to giving it to Andrea Lee. I don't like to read into that narrative too much. I expect the fight to play out the way it's going to play out, and if it's a close fight, it's a fucking close fight. With that said, I'm still going to go with Shevchenko on the other end. I think she's making improvements in the grappling and the wrestling department, not to mention the jiu-jitsu department, beautiful armbar that she was able to throw up against Lucy Pudilova. But I do think that we see Shevchenko win this fight. I think it goes to a decision, right? I don't see this fight. I don't see who finishes it either which way. I don't see a submission either side. I don't see a knockout either side. If anything, it would probably be Shevchenko that gets the knockout. That's plus 950. I don't see that happening, though. So I'll go Shevchenko by decision at plus 130. That's where I'm leaning here. The overs are juiced to shit, right? Over 2.5, minus 425. So it's going to be very tough to kind of sell that to anybody. But I like Shevchenko. Talk me down. Is there love on Lee from your side, or do you think Shevchenko cruises as well?
Yeah, again, so this is another fight I got earmarked go the distance, but it's minus 370 fight goes the distance. So there's nothing that can be gained there. So now you got to figure, well, what side do I want to be on? And whatever side you're going to settle on, you're going to take that side by decision. I see where the love for Lee is coming in. It just really depends on the improvements that Antonina's made. Now, bear with me here, right? When you look at Valentina's last 2-3 fights in particular, she's been using her wrestling a lot, right? And especially in that last fight with Jessica Andrade, she looked like Jordan Burroughs in there. This is obviously an aspect of her game that she's worked a lot on, and you're seeing her display it. Is she a world-class kickboxer? Yeah. Is she a world champion? Sure. Could she go out there and get the victory? Yeah, no doubt about it. But it's like, this is MMA. There's got to be different facets to the game, right? You have to have different skill set. And it's the path of least resistance. Why would I want to stand in front of Jessica Andrade, who's just going to bomb me with T-Rex punches, but just rip them? Heavy, heavy power, go to the body, go to the head. When I know I can take her down, go with that. Antonina doesn't seem like she can wrestle in the slightest bit. You've seen her exposed in the wrestling department time and time again, taken down by I guess most namely, when you look at the Katlyn Chookagian fight with the 3 takedowns, but it's the ability to not do anything off of her back. Once she got taken down, she almost seems defenseless. But then look at the very next fight against Lipsky, where she scores the takedown, and all of a sudden she's putting on the grappling clinic. I think with Katlyn Chookagian, Chookagian's a black belt right now, I'm pretty sure, right? She spent a lot of time, brown belt, spent a lot of time working on her wrestling out in New York, spending a lot of time at Nick Catone's MMA, spending a lot of time just refining her all-around game. So Getting taken down by her, yeah, not the end of the world. Andrea Lee's, she's dealt a lot with takedown defense issues. In fact, you can attribute the entire 3-fight losing streak to takedown defense issues. So if Antonina Shevchenko can come in here and have a bit of a polished wrestling game and can mix in the wrestling, then yeah, it's her fight to take. It's just there's not enough for me to go off of. We just got the Lipsky fight. Beyond that, it doesn't appear that she can wrestle. The Roxanne Modafferi fight, she's taken down 5 times. Doesn't appear to be physically strong enough to stuff Roxanne's shots, which is a bit problematic, but 5 takedowns, and again, can't do anything off her back. Kaylin Chookagian wasn't really known for her wrestling, puts a clinic on her. 3 takedowns, she's not really able to do anything off her back. The Lucy Podolova fight, she armbars her, but again, she's taking down in that fight. So, if the fight was to stay standing, is she a better striker than Andrea Lee? Sure. But she's low volume, right? When you look at her numbers as well, it's the same thing. 66, 64, 16, 25 when she's getting taken down. So now you go back in her kickboxing career and you look at her time in Lion fight and you look at all of her Muay Thai fights. They're all decision fights and they're all low volume. She's just not her sister. That's something that we have to remember. That's something that we have to come to grips with. And when you line this fight with her as a nearly 2-1 favorite, I think you're basing that a lot on her sister, her last name. So with Lee, I look at Lee and it's like the polar opposite, right? You mentioned the fact that it's like, okay, you know what? She's on a 3-fight losing streak. But you can make an argument in all those fights that's like she's out there fighting. When Shevchenko was losing, she was completely dominated by Modafferi, completely dominated by Chookagian. She's not in those fights. She's out there getting beaten up. When she's in against low-level competition, she could look good. When you look at Lee, meanwhile, it's like Lee's won her 3 fights fairly convincingly, but the Joanne Calderwood fight, it's a good fight, man. That's a split decision to a top contender like Calderwood, who was going to get a title shot before she took that bum fight. Then the Laura Murphy fight, she's robbed, right? She outlands her 104-80. But it's the takedown defense, as I mentioned. A couple greasy takedowns. End of the round. Of course. And then the Roxanne Modafferi fight, right? She outstrikes her 97-60. Takes her down 3 times. But gets taken down 4 times. Now, as you can see, Roxanne Modafferi's wrestling and grappling is on a whole other level than Valentina. Or than Antonina. Not Valentina, what am I talking about? Than Antonina Shevchenko, right? So she's in that fight. She's in the Murphy fight, probably got robbed. She's in the Calderwood fight. She's very competitive in all these fights. She can land over 100 significant strikes. She has the volume. She's got the strength. And she's also scoring offensive takedowns. She took down Calderwood 3 times. She took down Roxanne 3 times as well, right? I think if anybody's getting the takedown in this fight, it's not Antonina. I think if anybody's getting the takedown, it's going to be Lee. And if the fight stays standing, I think Lee's just going to double her up and hopefully 2-1 her and just probably, even if she lands the better shots, we land more of them. As far as power goes, Antonina doesn't have any power standing. So she's not going to knock her out. She's not going to wobble her. She's not going to land some huge eye-catching shot for the judges. If anything, it's just going to come down to work rate. And I'm hoping Lee just outworks her for at least the first 2 rounds. And then if she takes the 3rd round off, so be it. But this thing lines up probably for a decision. Yeah, probably. It's going to decision. And it's probably going to be a close, competitive, maybe even be a split decision, depending on who the 2-3 judges are watching this fight. But I think Lee's going to come out on the other side of it because of her ability to score the takedowns when she needs them, as well as just the better output all around. So Lee by decision is +2. It's 167, I believe. Let me just bring that up. You 168. Yeah. So Andrea Lee by decision is +168. It's a good plus money tag. The fact that this fight to go to the decision is -370. It's going to the decision, right? The fact that both of them are plus money to win a decision, it makes you almost want to bet both sides. If you put $100 on both sides, this thing's going to decision, right? One of them's going to win that decision. It's a plus money. You lose one bet, you win one bet, but because it's plus money, you'd walk out on the other side of it. You'd win $68 on the lead bet. And what was the Valentina? Or sorry, the Antonina Shevchenko by decision?
Antonina, I think, was plus, let me just confirm that, plus 130.
Right. So you would hope that Lee wins so you can win $68 as opposed to $30. What I'm saying is that this thing's probably going to decision. Whoever you decide at the end of the day, this is who I feel comfortable with, this is who I'm picking. I think you try to juice that and you take it by decision.
I think it's interesting that you said like Lee will more than likely be the one kind of getting the takedowns. I think it could work either way. I think if Antonina kind of pulls the Lauren Murphy card here and just waits to go for a takedown at the end of the round, that could potentially work too. I think that Lee's takedown defense is slacking as well. So it might just come down to who the fuck lands takedowns and is able to kind of, control that aspect of the fight, especially considering that both these fighters are strikers, right? So I can't wait to see how this
I know. Two strikers, and the whole breakdown is who's going to score the takedown. Great. I love this sport.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one's an interesting one. We got Jamie Pickett going up against Jordan Wright. Pretty much evens here. I wish we were getting someone slightly better than Jamie Pickett because I would love to fade Jordan Wright once again. But it's tough. Jordan Wright's not that guy. I think a lot of people are thinking that they're getting. He's durable. That's probably the best thing I could say about him. He went to a hellish 3 rounds against Punahale Soriano, went a hellish 3 rounds against Stefan and Chukwi, and even the Javon Patti fight, right? That's another big striker that he was able to take his shots and then eventually put him away in that second round. But there isn't too much urgency. Like, you don't see that Javon Patti type of finish from him quite often against higher level competition. It almost seems like he allows his opponents to kind of set the pace and he just holds their hand and let them fucking do it, just as he did it in the Tefan and Chukwi fight, right? What we've seen in Chukwi's, he's kind of slower at this weight class, as Junior Park was able to kind of show us last weekend. But Jamie Pickett just was like, all right, I'm going to let Tefan fucking control the pace here, and I'm just going to go with him. I think if he has one of those Javon Patti moments where he just goes out there and blitzes Jordan Wright, he could absolutely put him out there. I don't think Wright has great durability. I think he's quite chinny. I think that Pickett has the power to put him out, but I just have a bad taste in my mouth from Pickett in terms of wanting to actually pick him to win this fight. Again, I think people that are just auto-fading Jordan Wright here might be in for a tougher fight than they're expecting, but I do expect Pickett to go out there and still pull off the knockout probably in the second round here. So I'll go with Pickett. Minus 105 again, not too bad of a line straight up, but we're here talking about props. Pickett by KO plus 205, not too bad of a line. Another line that I don't mind, fight won't start round 3, minus 140. I think that's solid, especially considering that Jordan Wright's never been to a third round. The longest he's ever been is 5 minutes and 48 seconds. That's it. He's been to a second round, I think, twice in his career, which is absolutely crazy. But again, Pickett, not the most reliable. The best thing you can say about him is that he's durable. And if he can take a couple of shots of Wright and kind of counter him perfectly, I think he could absolutely put Jordan Wright on his butt and then eventually finish him. But again, Pickett, I don't think he's UFC caliber. I don't think Jordan Wright is the UFC caliber either. Maybe he's like a LFA champion or fucking AFC champion, but I don't think he's going to cut in the UFC much. We do have to credit Jordan Wright though, right? The guy is explosive. He's athletic. The guy has some good physical capabilities, which is why he was able to dust the cans that he was able to dust. But then once you start fighting legitimate competition, it's going to start catching up to you, just as when we saw, Joaquin Buckley finish him, Anthony Hernandez finish him. And I think that Jamie Pickett will probably be added to that list and end up finishing him too. I just wish he was a little bit more trustworthy. So I'll go Pickett by KO plus 205. Fight won't start round 3, minus 140. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, that's pretty fair. This is the least sexiest play in my opinion, but I kind of went the other way with Wright, and I think that he's just a sleeper pick. I think he's the guy that people write off. And you and I talk about this week in, week out. It's like you come in, you lose your debut, you don't look good in the process, and it's like an instant fade. It's an auto fade. I want nothing to do with this guy. And the way he got knocked out especially, not good. He gets knocked out right at the tail end of the first round, survives the buzzer, goes back to his corner, and he's like slurring his words. He's like mumbling. His coaching staff should not have let him go out for the second round with Joaquin Buckley. They do. He walks out and just immediately, first punch that lands, he just topples over. So I was like, this is a bad spot, because oftentimes you'll see guys get rocked in a round. You'll see guys get dropped in a round. You'll see guys have to overcome adversity. And in his case, it was like, no, man, his brain shut right off. So it's like, not only is it a chin issue, it's like a neurological issue. You don't really want to feel trustworthy with this guy going forward, that this is punchy kicky, man. Eventually somebody's going to chin check him, and how is he going to react to that? Anthony Hernandez is a submission artist, right? Comes on Contender Series, one shot, bam, 30 seconds into the fight, he completely topples over. It's a no contest on his record because Hernandez is smoking the reef, right? But it's a clean victory, man. And it's not even like the biggest punch in his arsenal. It was just like a half-hearted shot, lands flush, knocks him out. You can't now bank on this guy and his chin moving forward. Definitely a prompt. Pickett's best asset, like you said, his chin, right? One guy's got a very untrustworthy chin. And in Pickett's case, it's like that's the one thing he banks off of. That 3 hard rounds with Soriano, Pugliano, like you mentioned, that counts for something. The 3 rounds with Tafon Njoku drops him, he knocks him down, he lands like 120 significant strikes, and this kid just keeps trucking the entire time. Now, I had a ticket on that fight to go the distance, and I had Njoku by decision. Both very big plus money tags, because it's like, wow, Njoku is just a wrecking machine. If he touches you, he puts you over. Pickett has never been knocked out. He has been chin checked. He's survived. And he showed that again in the Njoku fight. But the one thing he showed again in the Njoku fight is like he's just got such low volume. It's definitely his problem. I mean, this is a guy that fought on Dana White's Contender Series 3 times in order to get that contract. Submitted by Charles Byrd. Beyond that, he lands 5 significant strikes in 4 minutes and 55 seconds of action. So almost a full round, he lands 5. They're bringing back against Soriano, where he is getting taken down, but he lands 36. The Patti fight, he gets outstruck in the first round ever so slightly, loses the first round in my opinion, and then the second round, like you said, man on fire. Why? Because I've just lost the last 2 times on Contender Series. I'm not getting a contract. This is my last go at it. Who's ever been on the Contender Series 4 times and gone 0-3? Like, it's not happening. I need to let my hands go. And Patti's a little undersized for the weight class, and he looks fat and out of shape in the fight. And so he starts to tire as well. And I think that's what allows him to capitalize on it, and he knocks out Patti, and it's a good victory. It sets him up for his UFC debut, and it doesn't go his way with the Njoku. But the Njoku fight's the same shit, dude. It's low output. Now, last week when we talked about Njoku versus Park, we analyzed the fact that Njoku is very slow, and that Park probably takes his fight to the ground, and that would be his best path to victory. Don't stand in front of this machine of a man. Take him down, grind him, test his gas tank, but the takedowns would be key. And in the third round, and I guess in the second round as well, takedowns were key, but he didn't even need them. He just beat him with the jab. He was that much faster than him. Park just beats him to the jab routinely. Pickett, meanwhile, is not even trying. Homie's got an 80-inch reach, and he's not even letting his hands go. Like, he just kind of sits there and accepts it. And so, to me, I think that Wright, even though we're talking about how chinny he is, if Pickett's not going to let his hands go, then he's not going to land that devastating blow. And then for that matter, I think that Wright, 6'2", 77-inch reach, he's a big body, he's athletic, he moves well, he likes to pressure. You see in the Ike fight as well, he pressures. The Gabriel Checo fight, he pressures. But he's got a great kick game, Beverly Hills Ninja. He likes to kick a lot. And if he pressures forward against Pickett, Pickett moves off, he moves backwards, doesn't counter, doesn't let his hands go. Wright could win, certainly win rounds. If Wright stays back and just lets his kick go and dances around the outside, we're in the big cage, I believe, because they're going back to Texas. Yep. He's faster than Pickett. He's got better output than Pickett. He could just chip away with the kick game, and then Pickett's going to have to chase him and, again, let his hands go, to which I just don't know he's actually going to do. So the last but not least is that, we love shitting on Wright. Watch the first 3 minutes of Wright versus Buckley. He wins the first 3 minutes. It's like Buckley had to really gauge landing one of those shots because all he's doing is just outworking him with his kicks. Outworking him. I think that could be the path here against Pickett as well as outworking him. Now, good. Again, if he's going to get knocked out, I think it's going to come slightly later on. So the plays that I'm looking at this one specifically, the one I like was the over 1.5. Minus 150, 1.5 rounds. Wright comes forward on him, lands some stuff. I know if Wright wins, Pickett's not getting knocked out. Because even though he's a potent finisher, like you said, he's crushed a lot of cans, I have a lot of faith in Pickett's durability and his ability to take some damage. So I think that it'd be getting that over 1.5, and then he might be able to catch Wright. We're going to catch that 1.5, I'm hoping. That fight goes the distance plus 175. Now, like you mentioned, Wright's never been past 2 rounds, so it'd be foolish to pick him to go that. But he's fought so many shitty guys, the fights don't go the distance. And the guys that he's lost to, Joaquin Buckley, the guy with the greatest KO in the history of KOs on his record, and Anthony Hernandez, who's certainly no slouch. So, again, it could potentially go that way. But a big number I looked at was the Wright by decision was plus 390. So, again, if he's going to win this fight, I think it goes the distance. If Pickett's going to win this fight, he's knocking him out. So, blue, red, you have the Pickett by knockout. I think I got the Wright by decision. But confidence level, very, very minuscule, very, very low. I'm just hoping that he puts it together and comes out with a better sophomore outing.
Yeah, this is, again, I'm going to harp on it all fucking stream. This is a tough card. I see some people in the comment section talking about parlays and all that type of shit. Good luck. Like, even your PRPs and all that shit.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough this weekend, man. I think there's going to be some upsets. I think we had 6 out of the 9 underdogs or 5 out of the 9 underdogs win on this past weekend. Not to mention Bellator. We had a lot of fucking underdogs win on that.
PFL.
PFL, exactly. So I think this weekend as well, we could see a ton of upsets. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Mike Grundy going up against Lando Vannata. Another fight. I believe I counted it while you were doing your breakdown. 9 out of 12 fights are lined up minus 160 or better. And this is absolutely one of them. We got minus 125 on Mike Grundy, plus 100-ish on Mr. Lando Vannata. It's just so hard to trust Lando, right? Like, it's just too tough to trust him considering how he's been fighting as of late. Mike Grundy at least brings some serviceable skills to the table, especially with his wrestling. That first round that he had against Movsar Evloev was just absolutely insane, right? I don't know what the fuck Movsar has in terms of gills or lungs or whatever the fuck he does to breathe, because how he was getting out of that dart stroke the way that he was, shit, I'm happy, right? I mean, I was riding Movsar Evloev very heavily in that fight, and I was sweating my pants off. But luckily, once he was able to get out of that, he was really able to piece up Mike Grundy after that. And I think Grundy really was sucking wind after that too, considering how much power and squeeze he was putting on that submission. I still do think, even without that squeeze and all that, Grundy has a tad bit of a cardio issue himself. I think he does slow down later in fights, and I think that could eventually be his kryptonite. Is Lando Vannata the guy to actually take advantage of that? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the Lando Vannata that we initially saw when he fought Tony Ferguson in his UFC debut, that's a far cry from what we've been getting nowadays. The guy just doesn't show much urgency, giving up takedowns, especially considering he has a wrestling takedown or a wrestling background of his own. I think Grundy will be more than successful in terms of grounding this fight. And I think that we'll see Grundy have a ton of success in terms of controlling this fight on the ground. I think there is a potential for a submission here for Grundy. I believe it's around plus 600 if I'm not mistaken. I don't mind a little bit of a stab there considering how much he likes to actually hunt for chokes and hunt for submissions. But I think at the end of the day, he's going to be able to control this fight on the ground for the better part of it. And I think at the end of the day, I like Grundy by decision here. Even though over 2.5 at minus 190, little chalky. But I think that both guys are durable enough for us to at least see the halfway point of the third round. Even fight starts round 3, minus 215, a little bit more chalky. I'd rather take the minus 190 and eat the extra 2.5 minutes. But Grundy by decision, plus 205. Me likey that spot right there. And again, if you want to get cheeky with it, Grundy by submission at plus 630, not too bad of a spot either. Am I not giving enough credence to Lando Vannata? Talk me down a little bit. Or do you think Grundy actually cruises here?
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I think I'm gonna have to go with Grundy as well. Listen, I mean, with Lando Vannata, it was like magic UFC debut. Tony Ferguson, expected to lose, goes out there, drops him twice, puts on an absolute career showing, loses the fight, but it was expected. He drops Ferguson twice, stock rises. Then he has a KO of the year contender against John McDessie. It's like, what can this kid do wrong? He's at a Greg Jackson's camp, which was hot at the time. Guy wrestled collegiately, knows how to wrestle. He's got a funky striking style that's clearly got a lot of power. He's just adding to his highlight reel. He's taking off name guys. Sky's the limit for him. And then it was just like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was like a mental lapse. I don't know if he wasn't able to put it all together. The Jackson Winklejohn situation just kind of started to crumble and fall apart. I don't know that his training really ever progressed. His funky striking style, guys start to figure it out. You'll notice a lot of the times Lando Vannata in the first round looks awesome. Yeah. Lando Vannata in the second and the third round, they figure it out. And now that there's more tape readily available on him, guys figure it out. He likes to line up the right hand. He's got his hands low. He's going to dart in and out. He likes to set up the low kick. Like, once you start to figure out his timing and his rhythm, that's when they start to hit him. For a guy that's like reflex-based, moves his head, he doesn't get out of the way particularly all that often. Gets hit, gets tagged at, gets busted up, and it just doesn't look great for the judges. So beyond that hot start, the David Taymor fight, he takes a beating in. But it's the 2 takedowns against David Taymor. It's the takedown against Bobby Green, takedown against Drakkar Klose, 2 of them against Matt Frivola, 4 of them against Mark Diakese, and then 3 of them in the Bobby Green rematch, which is his last time out. These guys aren't wrestlers. These guys shouldn't be able to go out there and take you down like that. As I mentioned, dude wrestled collegiately for like 1 semester, but he was in a D1 program. Knows how to wrestle. Out at Jackson Winklejohn's camp in New Mexico. And yet, guys that are basically known for their striking are able to go out there and take him down. Bobby Green is a low-output counter-puncher boxer. He's able to take him down both times that he fights him, but particularly that last time, his last fight, 3 times. But Mark Diakese is a British striker. He's able to go out there and take him down 4 times. This all becomes troublesome for me. So one thing I noticed about Lando is that when you see a lot of interviews about him, he's like a wandering man. He's like a lost soul, right? He'll often talk about, we're training at Jackson Winklejohn. Is it a coma? Is it the offshoot side of it, right? they're basically training themselves, this and that, dabbling in that, a new version of myself, and it's the same old results. The Matt Frevola fight, 10-8 round in the third, he just took an absolute beating in that fight. You see his trajectory going down, you see his stock going down, you see the damage starting to pile up, you see him just starting to question himself, and then, for whatever reason, now, he's dropping down to 145 pounds. So it was interesting to me at first. I was like, shit, you know what? Maybe he should have been a 45er all along. Like Gunnar Nelson. Why does Gunnar Nelson fight at 170? Makes no sense. Yeah, right. Gunnar Nelson at 55 could be something maybe. Vannata as a 45er, intriguing. He's fought a lot of heavy name guys. He's fought a lot of good guys. He's fought a lot of guys that could not make 145 in their wildest dreams. So this would be a better move for him. Also, takedown defense seems to be an issue. Him at 45, he should be a little bit stronger. The guy should be a little bit weaker, than he's used to. Why can't he put it all together? But then I seen an interview like 2 days ago where they asked him about the weight cut, and he's like, I'm all in. Like, it's all or nothing. There's no turning back. Like, it basically, to paraphrase, it's like, my back's up against the wall. I can't figure anything else out other than I'm going to try this way. So I'm just dedicating it all, and this is one last shot. I'll make the weight. I'll show up. I'll give it a go. But, like, he kind of like he was recognizing like the days are getting numbered. Wasn't a great perspective to see it from. Now with Grundy, it doesn't even matter how big and strong you are. Grundy's going to want to take you down. Grundy's going to take you down. The guy's a 2014 Commonwealth bronze medalist. As far as wrestling on the UK circuit, tremendous. His father, Dave Grundy, was like the head of the national team for like 20 years. Mike's been wrestling his entire life. This guy's very adequate in the wrestling. The one thing is that 2014 he wins the Commonwealth bronze medal, right? 2014 is also the year he starts his pro career. So here's a guy that wrestled into his late 20s and then turned pro. He's just learning on the job. And as a result, he's such a great athlete, such a good wrestler. On the regional scene, he crushes these guys. There's no competition for him. As you start to fight into the UFC, now you're going to have a problem. In his fight with Nadner Amani, I thought Nadner Amani was doing an excellent job of stuffing the takedowns. He went to alpha male for the camp. He showed up in great shape. He stuffs those takedowns. You see Grundy plant that right hand. Not a natural striker, but you see he's adding those tools into his game. And then the Evloev fight. Who wants to go out there and wrestle Evloev? But Grundy does. 6 takedowns. That Darce choke in the first round, nasty, tight. As you mentioned, gills. With Russia, you don't know what's in the supplements. He probably does have gills. Once he survives that, maybe Grundy burns his arms out, but it's also Grundy's getting pushed now. He's getting pushed. He's never been pushed. He's never had to dig deep and go to that next set. But the fact that he goes 3 rounds, the fact that he never quit on himself, great gut check performance, great learning experience. He is 34, but I honestly think he's got the skill set here in that go out there and wrestle, get the takedowns. Striking, yeah, maybe you have improved it. Maybe you have a big right hand. But this kid can take a punch, Lando can take a punch, and you don't want to be striking for too long with him because he'll throw a spinning back fist, or he'll throw a spinning back kick, or he'll throw a Superman punch, or he'll switch stances and throw a head kick. Like, it's tricky, so just go out there and take him down. And so the last thing I want to mention is that when I heard the Lando interview, I was like, I don't like what I'm hearing from a mindset perspective. The Grundy interview, greatest quote ever. I'm going to chip away at his soul. Oh, I was hoping you were just going to say chip away. Take this guy down and grind him. I'm going to chip away, right? Chip away at his soul. Shit, he was already questioning his spirit heading in. I like it. So I got Grundy, and I agree with your assessment 100%. If Grundy gets the job done, Grundy by decision. I like fight goes the distance, minus 160. Even if Lando shows up reinvigorated, stuffs some takedowns, and boxes him up like Evloev did, we'll take a decision, right? Minus 160, not a terrible price tag. But that Grundy by decision at plus 205. I think that's where the money lies. So that's what I'm looking at myself.
I like it. I can't believe we're already at the prelims, the main event prelim here, because we got Jacare Souza going up against Andre Muniz here. Minus 125 for Jacare, plus 105 for Andre Muniz. I'm finding it hard to believe how to side with Muniz in this spot, other than having to bring up the fact that Jacare Souza is 41 years old. Outside of that, I saw one of my guys, DFS by the numbers, shout out to Brady, put out a tweet saying, try to convince me that Andre Muniz wins this fight without mentioning Kevin Holland or 41 years old. Probably can figure out a way to come up with a way that Andre Muniz wins this fight, right? He doesn't really bring much to the table in terms of the striking, doesn't really have heavy power in his hands. So how much do we have to worry about this glass jaw narrative on Jacare Souza? Not to mention Jacare only been knocked out 4 times, I believe. Lastly, obviously by Kevin Holland in a meme of a KO. I think if we saw that fight actually play out over the 3-round period, we know exactly how it would go, considering how Kevin Holland's next 2 fights ended up going. And then what was it? Robert Whittaker in 2017 and Gegard Mousasi in 2009. Those are the only times he's been knocked out. So this glass chin narrative about Jacare, I think, is being completely overblown. And obviously, it doesn't look good having that Kevin Holland fight in his last fight. But I don't think that Andre Muniz is going to be able to land anything big enough to actually cause him trouble in that aspect. I actually think that Jacare Souza has better striking, to be honest. I think he has the better striking. I think he has the better power as well. I think that... and the jiu-jitsu, even if it gets to the ground, I think he's still the better jiu-jitsu guy. Damian Maia is showing us that you can be old as fuck and still go out there and tie these guys up in a pretzel if you want. And I think that Jacare Souza can do the same thing here to Andre Muniz, who in his own right is a solid black belt in jiu-jitsu. The issue that I have with Muniz is he seems to accept his back a little bit too much. I think he goes out there and he's a little bit too confident in his guard game. Probably won't be here against Jacare, but when you see it on tape time and time again, it's hard to believe that he's just not going to accept that position, or that he's going to accept that position once again. So I'm having a hard time in terms of figuring out the 4 times that Muniz has been finished or lost, it was by knockout. Jacare Souza has power in his hands. He could potentially produce that sort of knockout, whether it's a ground and pound, whether it's on the feet. Or does he go out there and win this fight by decision? Because that plus 300 looks fucking juicy, looks very, very nice. And I ultimately will end up siding with Jacare to win the fight by... for me, it's a toss-up between knockout and decision. Decision being plus 300, and then obviously knockout being closer to plus 330. Again, we can do what you did in that, I forgot which fight it was.
Yeah,
fight.
exactly.
Just play both of them, see what happens, and maybe you end up with more money on either side. So ultimately, I'll go with Jacare by TKO. I'm going to take that plus 330 and say that he wins by finish. And even, I think he has a slightly better gas tank too. So if you want to try to poke that round 3 prop plus 1,200, not too bad of a line there. I think Muniz is a gasser. I think that Jacare does have a better gas tank. And it's hard to take out that thing in your brain of when Jacare was fighting Calvin Gastelum, right? If you remember that 3rd round, he was stalking him the entire time. It seemed like Calvin Gastelum wanted to get out of that fight because Jacare was just staying in his face, landing big shots, landing big throws. And then obviously the Chris Weidman fight after that goes out there and knocks him out silly in the 3rd round. So I think that Jacare's power is sustainable from minute 1 to minute 15, whereas Andre Muniz, that guy's gas tank starts to take a hit roughly after that 6 or 7 minute mark. I'm expecting the same thing here. I like Jacare. KO, I think decision is live as well, but ultimately I'll go KO at plus 330. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, you talk about suspect gas tank. It's like, the Kelvin Gastelum fight, 3rd round, marching him down. I thought he won that fight, dude. It was in Brazil too. Like, why are you gonna screw Jacare in Brazil, man? And the Chris Weidman fight, he's arguably down 2 rounds, and he just comes at him zombie mode and knocks him out. And then just 2 fights ago, because we're all talking about Kevin Holland. Brady's right. Everyone's talking about Kevin Holland. Just 2 fights ago, he goes up a weight class. It goes 5 rounds with the current light heavyweight champion of the world. So, yeah, where's this narrative that the gas tank's all that bad? But, like I'll agree, right? You got to talk about the fact that he's 41 because he is, and his best days are certainly behind him. This is a guy that's been a top 3 middleweight in the world for a decade. He has always a bridesmaid, never a bride outside of Strikeforce, really, but he's always been knocking on the door. You know, him, Yoel, Luke Rockhold, Weidman, those were the guys. But the sport's passed them all by. Yoel's now in his mid to late 40s. He's released from the promotions with Bellator. Chris Weidman just shattered his leg. You know, maybe he comes back for a retirement fight at some point in the next couple of years, but his best days are behind him. Luke Rockhold, oh my God. Luke Rockhold's career is completely in disarray and durability is completely out the window. So yeah, Jacare is just like the rest of those guys. Father time is catching up to him. Father time is beating him. We talk about Maia being able to pull it together. Maia's like a unicorn, man. But even like Fabricio Verdum, great jiu-jitsu, older guy now, can still play it, can still get it. But if you hit this guy, he's not what he used to be. And his gas tank, it's not what it used to be. And I saw you just, congrats on the cash. You just spammed a Ferreira ticket on that Verdum fight from PFL last weekend. You were just like, fuck it, plus 200. But it's a good play because realistically, it's like, dude, Verdum does this. Dude lost to Alexei Olenek just 2 fights back. Yeah, he's got a suspect gas tank. He's a lot older now. And your jiu-jitsu, sometimes it's just not enough. And so that's, I guess, kind of the worry with Jacare. I'm picking him. I think his fight goes the distance, minus 110. I got Jacare by decision, plus 300. But you can't ignore the fact that he's 41 and slowing down. You can't ignore the fact that the game is starting to catch up to him. And the last thing I'll mention, I won't mention the Kevin Holland knockout.
Thank you.
What I will mention that's a little bit troubling in that fight is that Kevin Holland had just been awarded his black belt from Travis Lutter out of Texas. What we've seen from his black belt in the subsequent 2 fights is what black belt? Non-existent, right? Fuck it, what are you talking about black belt? Martin Vettori and Derek Brunson literally had zero problems with it in the slightest bit. But if you rewatch Jacare versus Holland, Holland's throwing up high guard. Holland's chasing armbars and triangles. That's what creates the scramble that gets him up the first time. And then the second time Jacare ends up on him, he's already tired. He's already tired just shooting the 2 takedowns. So then I go back and I watch the Jack Hermanson fight. Jack Hermanson, he gives no respect to Jacare's ground game. He takes him down 3 times, sits in his guard, has his way with him, out-grapples him. Jacare, again, grappling has always been on another level, but now you're older, and now you're working on your striking, and now you're working on different aspects of your game. Something's got to go by the wayside, and if grappling goes by the wayside, you're in trouble. Now, his main training partner is Rodolfo Vieira, who we know is one of the best BJJ guys in the world, but he's got terrible cardio, and in these fights, once he gets tired, his grappling goes out the fucking window. So I guess I'm a little bit worried that with Andre Muniz, 3rd degree BJJ black belt, very apt on the ground, likes to play the guard game. I'm not worried about him submitting Jacare Souza. That I'm not worried about. I'm worried about him ending up on top. Maybe him ending up a sweep. Him making Jacare work. Jacare getting tired, and then him all of a sudden winning a couple positional exchanges, getting the nod on the scorecards. Either way, this thing's going the distance. And at minus 110, that's a play I love. But I'll admit, I saw that Jacare plus 300. I thought, what's Jacare's path here? Take him down? We know everybody who's fought in Muniz takes him down. He gives up takedowns to everybody because he likes to play his guard game. Jacare is the wrong guy to play a guard game against. So Jacare gets those takedowns, stays on top, stays comfy, doesn't overexert himself. He picks up a decision. Plus 300, sign me up. But if for whatever reason Andre Muniz was able to tire out the legend and, again, win a couple of these scrambles, still going the distance. He's not knocking out Jacare, in my opinion, even though Holland was a weird position. This guy's not known for it. He's got 1 knockout in the last 7 years, and it was 4 years ago. He's not a knockout threat. I don't think he knocks out Jacare. He's a submission threat to almost anybody in the world at this weight class, except for Jacare. So, yeah, I mean, I think this thing's going the distance regardless, minus 110, but the pick's going to be Jacare by decision, plus 300.
Yeah, this isn't Fabinski who absolutely panics as soon as he ties up with somebody with a black belt. Gerald Mearshart a couple weeks ago. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here we got the main card kicking off here. I do want to remind you guys, we got over 230 people in the live chat right now. Shout out to everybody supporting us on this Thursday evening. Make sure you guys hit that like. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe. And near the ending of the show, I will announce who I'm going to be having on tomorrow's The Ultimate Weigh-In Show. Got a solid lineup for you guys. Can't wait to show you guys who it is, but you guys will have to wait until the end of the main event and before we get into the 3 best prop bets. All right, let's get into the main card here, and I'm hoping that Tapology is on some shit as to why Matt Schnell and Rogerio Bontorin is the 3rd fight into the main card, but I'm going to go with Tapology's order here, and they got Shane Burgos and Edson Barboza kicking off the main card here. Not too shabby of a fight. Obviously, odds very close, just like the rest of the card. Minus 140 for Shane Burgos, plus 120 for Edson Barboza. Now, before getting into the tape for this fight, I like me some Barboza. I think that Barboza should be a solid spot here, especially considering the last images I have of Shane Burgos is him getting nuked by Josh Emmett over and over again in that fight. The fact that he even survived 2 knockdowns from a power puncher like Josh Emmett was very commendable. But Josh Emmett, absolute beast, man. We don't give him enough credit. If I'm not mistaken, he's been an underdog more often than not in his fights, and he still comes out on the winning end. The guy has 10 knockdowns in 9 fights, 4 of those against Felipe Araches, 2 of those against Shane Burgos. The guy just goes out there and drops dudes for a living. That's what he does. So I'll give Shane Burgos a little bit of a pass for that Josh Emmett fight. Edson Barboza, we always know what his kryptonite is, right? Either you go out there, you grapple fuck him. If you don't have grapple fucking, put him on his back foot. Don't let him be the one dictating the pace. Don't let him get his kicks off. Don't let him get comfortable in his striking range. And I think that's exactly what we're going to get here with Shane Burgos. I think Shane Burgos is still a high-level fighter in this featherweight division. I think that he still has a lot to give, even though he's had a couple stumbles with the Calvin Kattar knockout a couple years ago, and then obviously the Josh Emmett loss last time out. But I think that this is a perfectly styled matchup for him. As long as he doesn't get put off in terms of his lights going off or anything like that, I think he can pressure Barboza from minute 1 to minute 15. Just stay in his face, put out the jab there. He has versatility of strikes that he can throw at Barboza. Obviously, Barboza, a very high-level Muay Thai fighter himself, but just not the same fighter when he's the one fighting off of his back foot. And I think that's what Shane Burgos is going to be successful in doing throughout this fight. My concern is just Burgos' durability. Is it there? I think it still is. And as long as he stays conscious in this fight, he should completely win it. So the way that I'm looking at it is that there's 2 things. The Edson Barboza narrative recently has been he's going down to 145. This is obviously his third stint there, and he's made the weight. How he's making the weight, I have fucking no idea. There's no towel to even do a towel trick if you wanted to do that. But the guy just makes the weight. I don't know where the weight is coming off from, but the guy's aging. He's 35 years old, right? He's getting up there in weight. This weight cut can't be getting any easier. And at a certain point, those durability issues are going to start to catch up to him. I think that Shane Burgos is a guy that can go out there and exploit that type of issues. With that said, we haven't truly seen it be exploited yet in the featherweight division, so we don't know exactly when that's going to happen. It could happen against Burgos, but I'll give Barboza the benefit of the doubt. I'll go with Burgos to actually win this fight by decision, just by pretty much outpointing him all over 15 minutes, but he has to be sure that he stays in front of his face. And that's kind of the Tiger Showman style, is it not? Like they're just mean fucking Muay Thai strikers. They want to stay in your face. They don't want to give you the space to work, and just keep you kind of like overcrowd your system and just not just always have you thinking about something rather than, okay, I can finally get my strikes off. Before you even finish that thought, they're going to have a jab in your face, or they're going to keep or a leg kick or whatever the hell it might be. That's Shane Burgos' style. That's how I think he ends up winning this fight. I think this fight collects some rounds over 2.5 minus 175. A little bit too chalky considering we have some power punches here in Burgos and Barboza, but Burgos by decision is what I'm settling on, and that is currently at plus 175. Burgos by TKO plus 380, not too shabby either, but I think the most likely outcome is Burgos by decision here by just putting a little bit of a clinic on Barboza over 15 minutes. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I think that's the where I'd go as well. But on a bet perspective, like a prop side of things, yeah, I don't think that there's any one that I really like. The fight goes the distance props are way too juiced, considering Burgos is a little bit chinny. I'm not gonna lie. You look at the Josh Emmett fight. Yeah, dude, Josh Emmett's got nukes in his hands. I mean, talk to Jeremy Stevens about that one. This guy touches you in the right spot, you are getting completely KO'd. And he takes his two best punches. He gets dropped, he gets back up, and he fights on. But you got to admit, he gets hit and he gets floored out. It's beyond that. It's not even the Calvin Kattar fight, where again, he's arguably up the first 2 rounds, and in the third round he gets boxed up by Calvin Kattar. It's that Kurt Holloway fight where he gets dropped by a stiff jab and he's off his back, and then he ends up just submitting Kurt Holloway with an armbar. But it's like, he's only 29 years old. He's still relatively young. He still hasn't taken a whole lot of damage, but the way he fights, it's like, he is there to get dropped, and it is a bit of a problem. When you look at all the other guys from Tiger Schulman that have come out of the gym, they're all very tight technical strikers. Jimmy Rivera, Uriah Hall, even Mike Trezano pulling off the upset. Julio Arce, yeah, it's like these guys keep it tight. These guys keep it very controlled. Burgos is a little bit different. Burgos wants to fight you. Burgos wants to stand in the middle of the cage and engage in a war. The way he fought Cub Swanson was not the way to fight Cub Swanson, but he gets a victory out of it, and it's entertaining, and it's a fight of the night contender. And the way he goes and he fights Josh Emmett, it's the same thing. It's like an ego. Like he's got something to prove. When you're standing in front of guys like Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett, and to a lesser extent Cub Swanson, these guys hit you, they're going to do a lot of damage. And so my problem is, if he has an ego and a chip on his shoulder, lost his last fight, wants to come out here and put on a show, Edson's not the guy, my man. You don't want to stand in front of this guy. Because again, when Dan Hooker gives him that space, doesn't pressure him off the get-go, you become a punching bag. Once you're a punching bag with Edson Barboza, he's going to tee off on you. But I agree with Barboza, dropping down to 145 pounds. He's 35 years old. He's 1-1 mixed results. A lot of people want to scream robbery in the Dan Ige fight, but it's the same way. How did Jorge Masvidal lose to Ally Quinto once upon a time? The first round, you drop him. The first round, you hurt him. The first round, you look good. The second and the third round, you coasted, and you took it off, and he ever so slightly outworked you. I had Barboza bet that night. I'm not ashamed to admit I thought Dan Ige did enough to win the fight. When it was going to the scorecards, I thought I was going to get screwed. I did. Twitter was all like, man, we got robbed, but we didn't. We didn't. Barboza took his foot off the gas. Now the Makwan Americani fight, I'm all in on Barboza, right? How's he going to lose a fight to Makwan Americani?
Close, though.
Fuck, man, it was way too close. He gives up 3 takedowns. And when he was standing, he wasn't engaging. He wasn't letting his hands go. He was worried about getting taken down. Now he drops Makwan Americani. He hurts Makwan Americani. But Americani, 1, not a striker, can't take the shots. And 2, has a big-time suspect gas tank. Very one-dimensional. You know what he's going to do. He's going to try to wrestle you, and he's going to get tired. That I could understand. Burgos would get floored by Josh Emmett and pop up and still come right back at him. It's impressive stuff. When you look at strictly by the numbers with Shane Burgos, that last fight of his with Josh Emmett, the first round he outstrikes Josh Emmett 46-36, right? Second round he outstrikes him 48-40, and then the third round he gets dropped. He's down 51-34. Over the whole course of the fight, 128 significant strikes landed, getting hit, getting hurt, coming back after you. The same thing with the Cub fight. Got hit, got hurt, came back after him. He does that with Barboza. You nailed it. We've seen Barboza fight so many times. There's 2 passive victories against this guy. You can take him down and wrestle fuck him, which is what you probably want to do. But not everybody's able to take that. You're not Khabib, you're not Kevin Lee, you're not those guys. Okay, path B, push him off his back foot. You got to move backwards on him. Do not let him pressure you. That's where he fights off his best. You need to move him backwards. His career is starting to really mirror image his training partner Marlon Moraes. They're both at the Armory in Juniper, Florida. They both leave and they both go to Mark Henry in New York. They both have the best fights of their career with Mark Henry in New York. They both decided to leave a little bit later in life, a little bit later in their careers, I should say, not life. Life goes on for hopefully many, many more years for these two individuals. They're still very young. But in the career game, and they go back to Florida, and they dabble with ATT and a little bit in South Florida as well. And it's just like you're trying to recapture magic that's not quite there. But I'm not going to discredit him. I'm not going to disrespect him. I think he could most definitely knock out Shane Burgos. But I think that Shane Burgos is able to withstand that early punishment and put it on him. So the play would be the Burgos by decision. I'm going to agree with you there. But I really think, look at this one from a live betting standpoint. I think that Barboza wins the first round. At the very least, Barboza is very competitive in the first round. And if Shane can get out of it, and you get the impression that he's starting to turn up the heat a little bit, he's not hurt, he's not tired, he's moving it on, I think that's when it would be a good time to hit this line.
The interesting thing about this, we have the under 2.5 at plus 155, and given that these guys are 2 big, heavy strikers, it almost seems like too good to be true, right? But ultimately, it could end up being that trap line. Even the Ferguson Dariush fight that we're going to talk about later, plus 160 for the under 2.5, considering those guys are absolute madmen. Even earlier in the card, right? Tucker Lutz and Kevin Aguilar, you got the under 2.5 sitting there at plus 175. There's a ton of spots on this card that seem almost like trap lines, considering that both guys are strikers. They throw big heat. Sometimes they enjoy the chaos. But yeah, this one I do expect to see to go to a decision, but I would not be surprised at all if somebody ends up getting the knockout here. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Chookagian versus Viviane Araujo. We got Chookagian minus 135 plus 115 for Viviane Araujo. I like Chookagian here, just as much as I like Burgos, to be honest. I think she can implement a solid game plan that will kind of stifle the game of Araujo. Now, I'd like to compare Chookagian slightly to Neil Magny and the aspect that they don't have anything that really flies off the sheets in terms of when you're talking about their skill sets or anything like that, but they're able to implement a certain game plan that kind of stifles their opponents, and they might fight close to their level of their competition, but they still come out with their hand raised at the end of the day. With Chookagian here, we know what the game plan is, right? Stay on the outside, pitter-patter from the outside, end off with leg kicks, stay on your bicycle, don't be there to be hit, and I think she can be very successful. And that's where I found why Jessica Eye was successful against Viviane Araujo. The only time Araujo has actually lost inside the UFC is that Jessica Eye was the one going first. She was the one kind of like overloading the systems of Araujo, and Araujo was more so like more thinking than she was actually reacting and actually throwing her combinations. And I think that's exactly what we're going to get here from Katlyn, is just pick her apart from the outside. She's going to have a 5-inch height advantage. The reach is pretty much the same here, but I think the height will obviously be a big deterrent in terms of Viviane Araujo landing big enough shots. And I think that we'll see Chookagian just pick her apart from the outside and not be there to be hit. I think we're going to see Araujo pretty much swinging at air for the majority of this fight, and that's going to start to gas her. I do believe that she still has a gas tank issue. Some people believe that she's managed to shore those up, but I still see her, huffing and puffing a little bit in that third round. And when she's swinging at air and trying to track down Katlyn Chookagian, I think it's only going to stress her out more. It's only going to gas her out more. And I'm not saying that Chookagian's going to finish her in the third round here, but I think that the longer this fight goes, the easier it is for Chookagian to implement her style. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I like Chookagian by decision at minus 105. I think she goes out there and just pitter-patters her from the outside. And again, be first. That's the main thing. Don't let Araujo get comfortable and just get your game going. The last thing I'll say about that, if you watch the Montana De La Rosa fight, is like the second and third rounds, you see when De La Rosa, when she's first, you kind of see like a bewildered look on Araujo's face, because like she's like, I'm usually the one that goes first, but De La Rosa's hitting me now. The only difference between De La Rosa and Chookagian, though, is that De La Rosa just stayed there. She didn't move. She didn't really get out of the pocket. She was there to be hit. Whereas Chookagian, we know she's going to be on her bicycle. We got the slightly bigger cage here being in Houston on a pay-per-view. I think that we see Chookagian successfully on her bicycle go out there and pitter-patter her and win a decision here. So I like minus 105 for the decision line on Chookagian. And the over 2.5 is minus 440. That's fucking juice to shit at this point in time. But if you want to look at the other side and you think that Araujo can land the bigger shots and she's going to have more of a sway towards the judges, plus 200-ish on her decision line is not too bad. But I think that Chookagian is much more likely to fight to her strengths, which is just outpoint. Stick and move. Let Viviani whiff at air and then start to stress her out that way and start to gas her out as well. So I got Chookagian minus 105 on a fight card with very close fights throughout. For some reason, I feel very strongly about Chookagian here. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with you. I think that Katlyn Chookagian gets the job done. But again, I just think there's not a whole lot of confidence there in that. It should be a relatively close fight. This is another fight I really think you look at the live betting opportunity here. With Viviane Arroyo, she is a first round wrecking machine. Looks like a world champion. And to that extent, she's never lost her first round in the UFC. Toledo Bernardo, she wins it. Lexus Davis, she wins it. Jessica I fight, her only loss in the UFC. In fact, her only loss, not in her pro career, but yeah, it was in the UFC. She wins the first round against Jessica I. Second and third round, she tires out. Montana De La Rosa, Roxanne Modafferi, all the same thing. Well, people think that this cardio issue comes into play, is that she gassed out against Alexis Davis, Jessica I, Montana De La Rosa, looked better against Modafferi, but the longer that you can push a pace on her, the longer you can stuff some of these takedowns and make her work, she starts to get tired. Everything she does is very strong. The striking, very strong. The leg kicks, big, heavy, thudding, lets her hands go, good power. You can tell that she's putting a lot of effort in each of her strikes, and the wrestling's the same thing, She's not really the most technical savvy wrestler, but she's strong. She's a brute. She's able to power you to the ground. It's using that much strength and physicality in all your techniques, that's what's going to tire you out. Now, she seems like she's a young prospect, She's just been fighting in the UFC for a handful of years now, and she's just got the one loss to I, and maybe she can build into something, but she is 34 years old. So I don't know how much she's going to make these drastic improvements to her cardio, how much she's going to drastically improve the gas tank. And that's something she's going to need on elite level going forward. Now with Katlyn Chookagian, she's just so well-rounded. BJJ brown belt, very good striking, great output, good cardio, fought the who's who of the division, and you really see that she's making a lot of these improvements, even as she's entering this stage of her career. The wrestling, she's really been adding into it. The grappling and all these different fine points of it. And so the reason why I like Katlyn Chookagian is I think that she's got the work rate, she's got the better striking, her takedown defense is going to be good enough to stop Vivi and keep the fight standing. She's going to have the work rate, the output, the speed, use the bigger cage, stay to the outside, and just work her over. But the reason I like this from a live betting opportunity is, again, Vivi's never lost her first round. And Katlyn's in a lot of these close-ish rounds. She doesn't ever really do that much to overwhelm you. This is not a girl that's probably ever going to score a 10-8 round, right? She just does enough to ever so slightly get that nod. So I think Vivi either wins the first round or it's very close. And then you should be able to get a plus money play on Katlyn Chookagian after that first round. And I really do think that cardio and volume and pace output will all be the deciding factors. So I got Katlyn Chookagian. The official prop would be that Chookagian by decision. Same thing as you. Yeah.
I like it. I like when you back up spots that I feel quite confident in. Not saying that I'm going out there and betting Chookagian as like my lock of the night or anything like that, but in terms of a fight card that's very closely lined throughout, this is one of the ones that I feel quite strongly about. All right, let's move on to the third fight on the main card here. Again, weird positioning in terms of where they put the fight, but match now against Rogerio Bontorin. Again, another kind of closely lined fight, minus 160 on Schnell, plus 140 on Bontorin. Having a hard time kind of dissecting this fight, but I still come out on the other end at all times picking Schnell to win this fight by decision. I think he has the slicker hands, just as he showed in the Tyson Nam fight. And ultimately, the blame is on myself, but I slightly blame you and other outside noise, which eventually made me switch my pick from Schnell to Nam last time around. And we got Nam fucking not able to put him away. Nam, to his credit, he was landing some good shots on Schnell. Schnell's chin was just there. You know what I mean? Like it was not as bad as we expected it to be, considering how he's been put on in his last fights. And again, the ultimate blame comes down to me, but I felt like the way that I broke down the fight the first time, it pretty much went to a T that way. You know what I mean? Schnell has great movement. He has great boxing. I think his hand speed is absolutely one of his best traits about him, which is why I think he's going to be able to go out there and do the same thing to Bontorin. But if Bontorin somehow either pulls guard or jumps on the back of him or clinches up with him and starts to initiate a grappling sequence, I think it gets a little bit hairy for Schnell. I'm not sure if he'll be able to submit Schnell. I do believe that Bontorin is a high-level BJJ black belt, but I think that Schnell is well-versed enough in the jiu-jitsu realm to at least be able to survive. Does he end up losing the round? More than likely, yeah. But for some reason, when I play this fight over and over in my head, I see Schnell being more successful with his hands, landing more damage, potentially getting a knockout, right? Like that Kai Kara France knockout for Bontorin last time around did not look that good. Have you ever seen a guy fall that way before, where it's like not even face first, head first, and it looked like he was trying to like stretch his neck out or something? But a bad way for him to face plant, or head plant, I should say, to lose that fight against Kai France. But I think that Schnell is just technically much more savvy on the feet. Honestly, his striking is a treat to watch. I love watching the guy operate, the way he's so fast with his hands, and great combinations, obviously finishing with kicks every now and then. But his boxing is definitely his bread and butter. And I think as long as he stays away from the takedowns and the grappling of Bontorin, he should go out there and have some success. I just want to distance Matt Schnell a little bit more from his knockout losses before I go out there and continue to trust him even more, because Bontorin still does have some power in his hands. I'll give him that. Technically not the better striker, but that doesn't matter in MMA if you can land the bigger, better strike at the perfect timing. And that is definitely a worry on my mind as to why I'm probably not running to the betting window to bet Matt Schnell here, especially at the chalk that he's at. But I do think that Schnell still ends up winning this fight. I see a lot of people on the under 2.5, and I kind of understand that angle. Ultimately, though, I'll go with Schnell to win by decision here, which is currently sitting at plus 177. That's the spot that I like the most, and that's how I feel. How are you feeling? Do you think Bontorin is more live than the line actually indicates?
Yeah, I think he's live. I think he's live for sure. The one thing that would cause for concern that I don't want to like lock it in and seal into play is that you got Matt Schnell that was preparing to take on Alex Perez, who is a gangster, badass, right? You go full camp for a huge opportunity, one of the biggest spots of your career. You're 31. You're at Fortis MMA now. You look good in your last fight under Fortis. It was his first fight there. Lot to like. This is a good spot. So falling up an opponent of that magnitude, and Alex Perez falling out, you get a replacement opponent in Rogerio Bontorin. Still a dangerous matchup. This is where I get the cause for concern. Bontorin, career 125, where he fights at 125 pounds. He has tough weight cuts, but that's part of what makes him effective at 125 is, dude is strong at 125. Now, Schnell fights at 125 too, but he has fought at 135. He's a little bit of a bigger body as a bantamweight. So Bontorin's taking this fight on short notice. They've moved it up to 135 pounds. I don't know if that affects him. I don't know if that makes his cardio better. I don't know if that makes it worse, because now it's like you got to deal with wrestling around with bigger guys. You saw Luke Sanders. Mind you, Luke Sanders is just known for fucking it up. But his last fight was at 145, right? Should that not have helped his cardio? Should that not have... No. Completely zapped out 4 minutes into the first round. Because now you're actually dealing with a slightly bigger opponent who's also rehydrated. You're moving around more weight in the octagon. With Bontorin, the Kai France fight, he takes him down the first round. He looks great in the first round. And then when it gets stood back up, which, bullshit stand up, but when it gets stood back up, he's tired, man. He's gassed. And this is early in the first round. Now he gets knocked out. He claims he wasn't knocked out, but I was like, I don't know.
He was out. He was out, brother.
Did you watch the same thing? And I was just looking at it.
Check the replay, my guy.
Yeah, he's just like, what are you talking about? Like, he wanted to continue. It's just like, I don't know, dude. But still, it was like he was gassed out in that spot. And so here's a guy that is very physical and very aggressive, and I think he puts a lot on his opponents early. You go back and you even watch his fight with Rolion Paiva, in which he wins with the cut stoppage. The first minute or two, he's putting it on Paiva. He hits him, he hurts him. It doesn't hurt him, but he cuts him open with the cut. He gets a takedown out of it. And then Paiva stands up and starts beating the shit out of Bontorin. And then the ref stops it for a second, sees the cut, and calls it off. So there's another spot where Bontorin's cardio didn't look like it was going to hold up. He just seems to put too much emphasis on that early aggression. Take the back, search for the choke, go. Kai France, man, you got to admit, dude, some of those rear naked chokes were in. They were locked in. And it's like he just hand fought the entire time, stayed safe. And as a result, when Bontorin stood back up, he was gassed. His arms were gassed. He went too hard in the paint for it. This is, and I'm going to say, another great live betting opportunity, because Schnell's not winning this first round. Bontorin's going to go in there. Bontorin's going to club him with an overhand right. He's going to immediately use it to shoot himself into a double leg. Either he gets him up against the cage and just slams him, or he's just going to peel him off the cage and settle in with the takedown. That first round, Bontorin on top of you is going to be a problem. They're both black belts. Schnell's not going to be a fish out of water. Schnell's going to defend everything, but Bontorin's going to hold down top position and win this first round. It's that second and third round where Bontorin's going to get tired. And if Bontorin bails on a couple of these takedown attempts, Schnell should outwork him. Like you said, he's got the better boxing. He's got the better range, better reach, throws in combinations, tighter, crisper, more linear. They should be able to beat him to the punch. But he's got a better gas tank. And you just got to chip away at this guy and take him into those deeper waters. But as far as like a straight up gun to my head, like I kind of got this feeling that Bontorin is successful with those takedowns, is able to just hold down top position, and is able to turn this into a jiu-jitsu match. Nullify him, take it into some deeper waters, win this fight. The Bontorin by decision line is plus 380. Ooh. But again, this is a volatile fight that the under 2.5, like you said, also does make a lot of sense. Bontorin's going to take him down. He's going to try to fish for the rear naked choke, and he's either going to get it, and it's going to be an under 2.5, or he's not going to get it, and Matt Schnell is going to take over in that later portion and put him away. But again, I just think he's too physically strong for Schnell. His jiu-jitsu, if this is going to be a grappling match, I want the guy that's going to be on top. The one thing I can't bank on is because he's short notice and up a weight class, I just don't know if he's going to have the gas in the tank. So I want to see weigh-ins, and even then, I'm still going to be on the fence, competitive fight, close fight. That's the theme of the card. I just think that there's slight spots that make more sense to me. But in terms of some of these, Bontorin by decision plus 380, Cachoeira by decision was plus 300, Grundy by decision plus 205. Like, I know their decision block. Giagos by sub 575. Like, there's a couple of these 3, 4, 5 to 1 prop plays. It's like, are they lower percentage? Yeah, but like I could see a scenario that exists where that's exactly what happens, is that Bontorin needs these takedowns, and just like the Babulatov fight, it's not like he can't go the distance. It's just that you got to match him, keep it close, and hopefully he squeaks one out. So reluctantly, I'm going to go with another dog play here. I'm going to take Rogerio Bontorin. But come weigh-ins, man. Come weigh-ins, it could be a big deciding factor. Like, to me, that's a big thing. That's the real head scratcher. That's the red flag I can't quite figure out. I don't know. Is the short notice opportunity good or bad for him? I'm not 100% set on it.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're harping on the weight class for this thing too, because that's definitely a factor in this fight. And not to mention, Matt Schnell has had his own battles with the scales and trying to make the weight himself. So I'm sure he's happy to make this fight at 135 pounds as well. And I can't wait to see how both guys look tomorrow morning once they actually hit the scales. All right, let's move on to the co-main event here. Absolute chaos incoming. We got Tony Ferguson going up against Beneil Dariush. And it seems like everybody and their mother is writing off Tony Ferguson. And I can't say that I blame them, but I want to tell them to tread lightly here. So we got minus 175 on Beneil Dariush, plus 155 on Tony Ferguson. And it's tough, right? If there's anybody that can come back from 8 rounds of adversity the way that Tony Ferguson dealt with against Justin Gaethje and obviously Charles Oliveira last time around, it's a guy like Tony Ferguson, right? That guy's absolutely mad, crazy in the head, and he's like fully obsessed with this shit. And I feel like he's going to try to make the changes that's required to go out there and win this fight. However, when you see Beneil Dariush win the fight that he did last time around against Carlos Diego Ferreira, it's hard not to believe that he's going to be able to do the same thing here against Tony Ferguson, who seems to have absolutely no takedown defense, right? Charles Oliveira was able to just pick him up, scoop him up, and just put him down, and then just get into his full guard and pretty much just, grind him out from there. Obviously, was having some success on the feet too, but with Beneil Dariush, I think he's going to have to put his wrestling singlet on, get this fight to the ground, and obviously his jiu-jitsu is good enough to hang with Tony Ferguson, and I think he could control him down there. Could he find a submission? Possibly, but I think that his best path to victory would just be play as disciplined as possible. Know that this is the biggest shot in your life, especially going up against the highest ranked opponent you've ever fought. And this is your opportunity to get a title shot or at least a number one contender shot in your next fight. So don't go into stupid Benny mode where you just fucking trade in the fire like the Drakkar Close fight and the Scott Holtzman fight. And even though those fights played out in your favor, it's just a matter of time until it doesn't. And you don't want to be trading in the fire and in the chaos against the king of chaos, in my opinion, Tony Ferguson. I'm not writing off Ferguson as much as most people are. Again, I've had numerous people hit me up in my DMs, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, comment section, all that type of stuff. If you don't make Beneil Dariush your lock of the night play, you should retire that name. Chill the fuck out, guys. Chill the fuck out, because I don't believe it's that big or that easy of a fight for him. I think it's still going to be tough. Tony Ferguson has always been at a disadvantage pretty much in all of his fights. You can easily make a case for all of his past opponents that he's beaten, but he still thrives through that shit and still comes out on the winning end because he creates chaos. Like him, Brandon Royval, and Yuri Prochazka, I believe, are pretty much all the same fighters, just at different weight classes, because they just bring chaos. They just bring this complete uncertainty that their opponents really can't really prepare for, and then either they get sucked into it or you get the Justin Gaethje performance where he just puts together his hands so well that Ferguson can't do anything about it, or Charles Oliveira just wraps him up like a fucking present and just lays on him for 15 minutes almost, right? So I can see Beneil taking the Charles route in this fight, taking the fight to the ground, try to play as safe as possible, try to nullify what's coming back his way from the jiu-jitsu realm from Ferguson. But if he decides to try to trade it in the pocket a little bit too much, things could get hairy, man. Dariush's chin is just waiting to get cracked at this point. It's been cracked so many times. He's been on wobbly legs so many times that I think it could be an issue. And the last thing I'll still say, I've harped on it a little bit. I think that Dariush does have a little bit of cardio issues. He does start to slow down later in fights, and we know Tony Ferguson can go fucking 25 rounds if he needs to. If Dariush shows a little bit of a loss in his step in that third round, I think things could get very, very bad for him, especially if he's not able to complete takedowns or hold Tony Ferguson down. I think he's going to be in for some shit. Ultimately, though, I'll go with Dariush. I think he's going to win this fight by decision. It's just that wrestling and that top pressure and his level of jiu-jitsu that I think is going to be too much for Tony Ferguson in this spot. So Dariush by decision plus 150. I don't mind it. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see those Tony Ferguson elbows from the bottom, cut him up and do some crazy shit. You can't count out Tony Ferguson as much as people are counting him out. I like Dariush to win this fight, but I'm putting my money nowhere near this fight. I just want to sit back and watch it as a fan. Are you writing off Ferguson as much as everybody else is? How are you seeing this fight go down, brother?
Yeah, well, see, I didn't write Donald Cerrone off as much as I should have, and that really burned me last weekend. So yeah, no, going into this one, you kind of get a similar impression with Tony Ferguson. It's that his best days seem to be behind him. He's 37 years old. But I don't know, I got this thing where a lot of the times when I'm retaping, it's like, well, how meaningful is it now, right? If I said, well, this dude submitted Matt Hughes, it'd be like, well, what does that do for you now, right? Yeah. That's the same thing. It's like the game passes you by. And we talked about Cachoeira earlier. It's like his time frame of who the best guys around the Luke Rockholds and the Yoel Romeros and the Chris Weidmans, all these guys are off the map. It's the same thing. It's like that's where it's headed. With Tony Ferguson, when you look at this crazy run, 8-fight winning streak, he's the best in the world. People are clamoring for him to fight Khabib, and a lot of people are betting him to beat Khabib. But when you look at that run, right, he flat out robs Danny Castillo. It's a split decision win, but it's hilarious. Dude, the biggest robbery. He spent the entire fight off his back. And even Joe was like, well, he was going for submissions. It's like, fuck off, dude. He's Eddie Bravo, guys. The only reason you just said that. Yeah. But anyways, you probably should have lost that one. Abel Trujillo drops him and wins the first round, but Tony comes back and wins, right? Edson Barboza stings him bad, wins the first round. Tony comes back and wins. Lando Vannata drops him twice, wins the first round. He comes back and he beats him. Kevin Lee, who had a staph infection, by the way, takes him down in the first round, mounts him, beating on him in the first round. Tony loses the first round. Kevin got staph infection, so yeah, how's that going to work out for you? He gets really tired, clearly. Tony comes back. Anthony Pettis drops him, beats him up in the first round. Tony comes back. Donald Cerrone competitive in the first round, I suppose. What I'm getting at is, one, he's squeaked by a lot of those fights. He almost always universally loses the first round. He's a slow starter. He gets dropped all the time. Doesn't have a bad chin. But, does get hurt often enough. But it's like, what got me is Donald Cerrone, right? This is his last win. Donald Cerrone. It's the farewell tour for him. He's just about done. Everyone's acknowledged that now. How meaningful is it? Doesn't matter. Anthony Pettis, no longer with the UFC, fighting in PFL. In fact, lost to Clay Collard as a 6-1 favorite in his last outing. Kevin Lee, that's a nice little win. Kevin Lee did have a staph infection in that fight, did win the first round, and then his body starts to shut down on him. Also, Kevin Lee, that's a big weight cut for him to 55, man. Again, I hate to make excuses for him because it's a nice win. Win over Kevin Lee, that's holds up in 2021. Rafael Dos Anjos, tail end. Lando Vannata, clinging to a job here. Edson Barboza, he's down at 45 now, and again, searching for something that might not be there. Josh Thompson, commentator for Bellator. Gleison Tebow losing in PFL. Abel Trujillo, I don't want to talk about that one.
No.
Danny Castillo, he's long time retired. He's an alpha male wrestling coach now. It's like, so that long win streak, it's really not as pretty as you remember it being. It was exciting. Holy shit, was it ever exciting? But it's like in 2021, I don't know where it gets you. And so that's when he runs into Justin Gaethje. And myself included, I'm on Team Ferguson in that fight because Ferguson creates the chaos. He creates the fire. He takes these guys into deeper waters. And really the only guys that had beaten Justin Gaethje at the time, Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier. They took everything he gave, they gave it right back. They broke him late in the third round, both of them. That's what I kind of thought here. Tony was going to take it, 5 rounds. He was going to dish it right back. He was going to slowly pull ahead. His cardio, second to none. He's never been tired before. And it's like he just stood there. Got teed off on. His striking looked abysmal. He's got Eddie Bravo calling for an Imanari roll between rounds. It was a bad game plan. And I don't know, it just seemed like something was missing out of him. So now he gets Charles Oliveira. Okay, no problem. Tony Ferguson, he wrestled collegiately. Sure, he's been taken down by 8 different opponents in the UFC, but the guy knows how to wrestle, and he's a BJJ black belt. He can scramble off his ground, and the striking, second to none. Well, like, Charles made him look amateurish. It's my problem is that he's not accepting it. He's always got some shit excuse. Like, you go back to the Oliveira fights. I barely even trained jiu-jitsu for that fight.
Yeah,
that was why? You're fighting Charles Oliveira, and you're not grappling every single day. Like, what are you talking about? It's a knee injury. It's an ankle injury. I ran across a freeway with my newborn child and hopped over a fence. CIA, they're after me, man. It's always fucking something. And so then him going on social media and being like, Khabib, you're not undefeated because you dodged me. It's like, dog, I don't know what you're looking at, but you're on a 2-fight losing streak. You've lost every single round, those 2 fights. You haven't looked relatively all that competitive. You're 37, and I seen your takedown defense against Charles Oliveira. You want no part of Khabib, my friend. But it's like at first it was like, oh, it's confidence. He's confident in himself, and as a prize fighter, you have to be confident in yourself. But now it's like borderlines like delusion. Like, I don't know what he's thinking. Can he win this fight? He's got the skills to win this fight. But Beneil's got to do exactly what he did against Carlos Diego Ferreira. Get those takedowns, ride that top control. The blueprint's been written here. Listen, we just saw what Gaethje did to him, and that's just be the better technical striker. You could stand in with him. You could strike with him. And I do expect Beneil to stand with him for pockets of time. But the more effective game plan is exactly what Charles did, which is I don't have to do anything but just take him down, secure top control. It's very difficult to submit an elite level competitor in this day and age, a high-level black belt, a top 5 guy in the division. It's very hard to submit these guys off your back. You don't want to be playing this guard game. Tony's takedown defense, this is actually interesting, right? As I mentioned, he's been taken down by like 8 different opponents in the UFC, but he's given up takedowns to guys you wouldn't even expect. Danny Castillo, sure. Abel Trujillo twice. Josh Thompson took him down. Edson Barboza took him down twice. Kevin Lee with the 3 takedowns. Donald Cerrone got him down. Charles Oliveira took him down 3 times. It's like the takedowns should be there for Beneil. Cardio, huge advantage for Tony. But if Tony's not standing, putting pressure on this guy, and last but not least, Tony, this is the last point I want to make here. Tony's KO ability, it's volume. Beneil usually gets caught by a stinger. Anthony Hernandez caught him with one he did not see coming. Drew Dober caught him with the clean one that was just like, man, he's putting it on him. Even the Jakar close fights, like, damn, that one stung him. And he perseveres a lot of the time, right? He comes through it a lot of the time. When you look at Tony, Donald Cerrone blew his nose, eye swelled up. Doctor stops it. Not a KO. Doctor stops it. Pettis breaks his hand. Duke's like, no moss, kid. Duke stops it. Technically, doctor stops it. Duke stops it. His last knockout before that is Katsunori Kakuno, which was a hell of a knockout, bro. That's a spectacular knockout. But again, it's like 2016, 2015. It's 5-6 years ago. 5-6 years ago since the last time he knocked a guy out. So Beneil is chinny, but Tony, and we've seen through all the wins, lose the first round, out-volume you in the second, take you out in the second, maybe in the third, but generally speaking, his history suggests the second is overwhelm you. So I think Beneil wins the first round. I think if you want to bet Tony, you would live bet Tony, get an even better plus money tag. I know we've talked about that on a couple spots in this card, but he's a slow starter. But in my mind, Beneil does that the first round, and then Beneil just does it for one more round. Get those takedowns, hold them down. Tony's just a different guy, man. He talks such a good game that it's like you believe in him, you get behind him, he's got one more, but it does seem a little bit checked out. And whereas a lot of people are making the argument, it's like, dude, he fought Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. Give him a pass. I'm trying to tell myself that was the argument I had with Donald Cerrone last week. Dude fought all the best guys. Dude fought Tony Ferguson. Dude fought Conor McGregor. Dude fought literally the best guys in the world that were available to him. Yeah, you lose to those guys, but it's like there's a certain point where you get into your career where it's like you lose to those guys and you lose to an entire crop of mid-range guys. And Beneil Dariush not mid-range, he's upper mid-range. I think he'll have enough to go out there and pull it off, but fuck, man, this is I only marked like 2 no bets on this entire card, and this is one that I want to make the no bet on. I got Dariush by decision plus 150. The fight goes the distance minus 155. I just know it's going to be a sweat and it's going to be a nail biter the entire time. It could be fight of the night. It's going to be super entertaining. I cannot wait for it. But I think if I want to get back on track, I mean, again, the props were good last week, so I'm not disappointed in the losses there. If I'm trying to be safe, like you said, parlay is not the way to go this week. If I want to be safe, if I want to be smart, is going against Tony Ferguson the way to do it? Like, the dude's hell on wheels. The dude's a wrecking ball. The dude is batshit crazy. But like if he shows up, like there is something there still. The pick is going to be Beneil. I just, I'm it's not for me. Your fans are telling you it's a lock of the night. Like I don't know that I agree with that assessment, but I do agree that I would also take Beneil, just like it sounds like they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a sweat and a half, and I don't want to be any part of that shit. Fuck that. All right, let's go to the main event here. We got Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. They are fighting for the vacant lightweight strap that Khabib Nurmagomedov actually just left for these guys. So they're pretty much playing second fiddle here. We know, just like light heavyweight, John Jones is a champion over there. Khabib is the champion here. He is retired, but something that we definitely need to acknowledge, though. Michael Chandler, talk about a debut, right? Goes out there and knocks out Dan Hooker, pretty much sets himself up for a title shot. Let's be honest. Realistically, it should be Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira. That's what actually should be happening. Dustin Poirier wants no part of the belt. He just wants that Conor fight. He wants to get that payday. All props to him. We know what his motive is. It's money at the end of the day, and how can you blame him, right? Considering the amount of miles and years that he's put in. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, does that make sense, though? The only reason I say that is you fought Conor, you beat Conor, and now you're getting a career-high payday, right? But 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, you want to talk about legacy? What's a bigger legacy, that you fought Conor again or that you were a world champion? I just feel like right now, the short-sighted paycheck is the McGregor paycheck for sure.
For sure.
But like, don't you want to be, everybody, you worked with a lot of fighters, man. You and I have been, we've match-made cards. You ran a gym. We've seen UFC veterans come and go. We've gone to all the seminars. One thing universally between all of these guys that I've recognized as like a characteristic between almost all fighters is, in their mind, all of them want the title. There's so very few guys that are like, I'm looking for good fights. Even fucking Cerrone, that last one, they were like, taking on Moroni. He's like, well, after this, I'm going back down to 55, giving one more title shot. It's like, what? But it's like, even a guy that's 50 fights into his career, who's, got 30 fights in the UFC, who's got all these bonuses, who's got money, it's like, that's what's in the back of their head. I always bring up Phil Baroni. Phil Baroni's 15 and 19. And it's like, it's a sickness. It's a sickness in his head that he's just like, I can't stop until I get a world title. Now, some guys want a Strikeforce title. Some guys want a WBC world title. Being a world champion is why you got in this game. Nobody comes in this game to take a beating. Nobody comes in this game to play second fiddle. They're all pursuing their goals and their ambitions. And even the guys that might not believe in themselves, right? You see Matt Serra on the poster behind me? They all believe, if I just had the chance, I might land that punch. All of them. You can take the number 50th guy in the world and be like, would you take a fight with whatever champion? Doesn't matter. Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz, Francis Ngannou. It'd be like, yeah, I got a puncher's chance. I can land a shot. What's the worst that can happen? I lose? I could win. They all believe that you can win. You need that mentality of, it's like, I can go out there and win. So with Dustin Poirier, it's like, would you not want to win the championship? Instead, it's like, you're going to fight Conor. That's going to delay you another year of your career. Meanwhile, you got dudes like Oliveira and Chandler that are getting better and moving. Like, I don't know. I think it was almost short-sighted for a monetary gain. I agree, the paycheck right now, fight Conor. But like, for the legacy, it's like, you already fought Conor twice, man. Like, is the trilogy match bigger than being a world champion? I'm not so sure about that, but anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No, I think I believe you're 100% right in terms of, he is kind of short-sighted with that approach here. I think he's expecting to win that fight, and obviously coming off that second fight, you got to believe that he has the utmost confidence to be able to do so, and then you got to believe that the title shot is waiting for him after that. So I don't mind this approach from him. Get that money and then eventually get the title shot right after that. I don't mind it.
Yeah, it's a lot to risk, though. Bruce Buffer is always, for the rest of time, going to say, and in this corner, former UFC lightweight, right? No one's going to be like, and in this corner, dude went 2-1 against Conor McGregor. Like, it's not an official title, man. I want titles. I want accolades. Like, that's why they do it. So many dudes that fight were former college wrestlers, and then when you talk to them, they're all like, yeah, I got a chip on my shoulder. I didn't win a national title. Yeah. I want to win a national title. I want to be an All-American. It left a sour taste in my mouth. I pursued fighting because I want to win. I want to be a victor, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, the fact that he stepped out, not a big deal, because this is the next best fight they could put together.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy about this fight. Again, it's going to be chaos. Imagine the co-main event and then going to this. Mr. Charlie Olives is always that guy that brings the fire, right? I believe like only 3 of his fights have gone to a decision or at least over that 2.5 round mark, which is why I pretty much am starting off this breakdown with that. The spot that I like the most is the under 2.5. I think that we're going to see much chaos pretty much from the first bell here. I do ever so slightly favor the Chandler side here. I do like him as a dog. I think he's going to be able to land the bigger shots on the feet. He mixes it up to the body pretty well, and then obviously brings his punches to the top. But he's like a wrestler striker, right? It's like those wide loop-in hooks, big shots. But he is fast. He is athletic. He is explosive as well, and I think that might catch Charles Oliveira off guard. Charles Oliveira, as good of a Muay Thai striker as he's become before our eyes, the guy still doesn't really move his head off the center line. I think that's asking for trouble, especially with the big power puncher here against Michael Chandler. If you're talking about winning minutes, I think that Charles Oliveira has all the tools in the world to beat Michael Chandler minute by minute in the striking realm, considering he's a much more complete fighter with his kicks, knees, elbows, and punches and all that stuff. And then the jiu-jitsu realm, you obviously give Charles Oliveira the advantage in that fight. But just as you kind of nitpicked Tony Ferguson's run, I want to kind of nitpick Charles Oliveira's run, right? Let's be honest. Like, it's a little bit sketchy. It's a little bit shaky. Let's start it off. It's an 8-fight winning streak that he's currently on, right? So Clay Guida, Christos Giagos, Jim Miller, again, already fought him before, avenges his loss. Okay, I'll give him that. David Tamor, that one was impressive considering that he rocked him first on the feet, a spot that a lot of people thought David Tamor would have the advantage in, rocks him in the feet, and then follows up with the anaconda choke. But still, David Tamor. Nick Lentz. Why do we need to see him beat down Nick Lentz again after he's already on a 4-fight winning streak? Why does that need to happen? Goes out there, breaks Jared Gordon's orbital, if I'm not mistaken, with a jab, and then finishes him a minute and a half into that fight. Then it gets a little bit harder, right? The Kevin Lee fight. Wins that fight, but the first 2 rounds were a little bit sketchy, right? That second round, especially when Kevin Lee was on top of him in half guard, you see Charles Oliveira look over at the referee like, hey, he's not doing anything. No, Charles, he was doing something. 1, he's in dominant position at half guard. 2, he's actually staying active enough with his punches. So don't be looking up at the referee. Use this highly acclaimed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that you have to find yourself out of this position. But no, he couldn't. You saw Kevin Lee go out there and just kind of control him in that range. But luckily for Charles Oliveira, Kevin Lee is a notorious gasser. That guy I have better gas tank than that guy, right? Like, he just put his head into a choke of Charles Oliveira in at the beginning of that 3rd round and just gave up that choke. And again, very good win for Charles Oliveira. But if you actually look at that fight, didn't really play out the best for him. And then the Tony Ferguson fight, I'll absolutely give him that fight. That one blew my mind. My lock of the night play that night was Tony Ferguson. Absolutely busted that ticket of mine. My next one, if I didn't pick Tony Ferguson, was going to be the under 2.5 there. Who the hell saw him go out there and control Tony Ferguson that way? I just wasn't expecting that to happen. Now here with Michael Chandler, I think he's going to struggle with getting Chandler down. I think he's going to struggle to get his jiu-jitsu game going the way he did against Tony Ferguson. On the feet, I think he's in trouble. Again, I think he's not going to react well to that power once it starts to land on him. Those are my question marks about Charles Oliveira. That's why I like Michael Chandler in this. Now, the question mark is they both have durability issues. Who's going to be the one that eats the canvas first? That's why I'd rather cover both sides with the under 2.5 here, because I expect it to be a high action pretty much from the get-go. I'd be very surprised if we see stalemate scenarios like we saw in the Tony Ferguson fight. Like, Tony had no idea what the fuck to do off of his back. Whereas if Charles Oliveira gets Chandler in those positions, I think he can threaten him a little bit more with submissions and actually get away with it. Now, Michael Chandler never been finished by submission. The best submission artist he's faced is probably Gaiotti Yamauchi, who he hung pretty well with on the ground, was able to stay out of submissions. And the other best guy was Sidney Outlaw, but that fight didn't even end up hitting the ground, and he knocks him out within like two minutes or something like that. So ultimately, I'm going to go with Chandler. I'm going to go with Chandler to win it in the first round, plus 450-ish, I think is that line. I love that spot. I think Chandler lands that bomb on him earlier, puts him out, and I think it's going to be a little bit too much for Charles, man. I think Charles still has that quit in him. And even if this fight does go longer, if my under 2.5 bet crashes, I kind of trust Chandler the longer this fight goes. I think the longer it goes, I think Charles will end up breaking, and I don't think he has many answers off of his back once Chandler is able to establish himself in top position, just as we saw in the Kevin Lee fight, just as we saw Chandler stay safe in the Gaiotti Yamauchi fight. Again, not a lot of people know about Yamauchi. You know about Yamauchi. Oh, that guy has some serious fucking jiu-jitsu. And the way that he was able to stay safe in that fight, majority of it playing out in that full guard, I thought that was very impressive. I would advise Chandler to try to pass the guard here and try to get to half guard at least, or side control, so he's not in as much trouble. But I think that first 7.5 minutes is going to be iffy for him if he decides to go for the wrestling early here. That's where I think Charles could potentially catch him with something. At the end of the day, though, I'm going to go Chandler here. I think he gets that knockout first round. Like I said, I think the first round knockout probably is plus 460. That's where I like the most here. Either way, as long as somebody goes to sleep or eats the canvas within 12 and a half minutes, I'm going to be happy. I think it's worth the chalk, to be honest. I think we're going to see high action from the get-go, and I ultimately think that we're going to see Chandler get his hand raised and take home that lightweight strap. How are you feeling about this one?
Yes, you made a good point with Chandler's grappling. It's like super underrated when you've seen him go against the guys like Goiti Yamauchi. I mean, he looks pretty competent in there. But little known fact, Michael Chandler is the only guy to ever submit Marcin Held. So it's like, yeah, grappling is something in his back pocket. But for my money's worth, it's like Michael Chandler is one of the most well-rounded fighters I've ever seen in my entire life, right? The guy is a former D1 wrestler of the University of Missouri. He was a starter. A great, pretty solid collegiate career. His wrestling is top notch. His explosiveness, his athleticism, his footwork is fantastic. His power, you want to talk about the power this guy packs in his punches? My God. Consider this for a second, right? Daniel Hooker. Daniel Hooker has never been knocked out. He's been TKO'd one time. Edson Barboza eventually cooked him to the body. He took all of Edson Barboza's best shots to the chin, walked through them. It was nasty. How was he doing it? But he did it. He proceeded to go 3 extremely hard rounds with Paul Felder in the rematch, took all of his best shots. He proceeded to go 5 full rounds with Dustin Poirier, took all of his best shots. Dan Hooker is got a absolute cast iron chin. Michael Chandler walks in there, he put a left hook on him, he completely just folds him up. Ground and pound follows him up, knocks him out. That's impressive. Benson Henderson. Benson Henderson has a absolutely legendary cast iron chin. Only one man has ever knocked him out. Rafael dos Anjos, back in the day, future UFC champion. You know, caught him with a shot that he clearly did not see coming. It was a strange little knockout too. Funny though. Like, interesting. Anyways, Chandler comes out there in that rematch with Benson Henderson. He puts that right hand on him. He knocks him out. When you look at it, it's like straight right knockout, straight left knockout, left hook knockout. He's got ample power in both of his hands. He's a great wrestler. He's got championship level experience. He can fight into those later rounds, even though I just think he puts so much into it that he does kind of gas himself out. The one thing's durability. That's like the one thing. You know, Achilles was the perfect Greek warrior. Thing is, his mom had to dip him in the water by his ankle. As a result, ankle super vulnerable. Motherfucker takes arrow in the ankle, and that's where that's where you get the Achilles heel. It's like, where's his kryptonite? It's like, when you mentioned that the longer you see this fight going, you see it playing towards Chandler. That's the only assessment I'm going to disagree with. I almost feel like the longer this fight goes, it's going to actually play out towards Charles Oliveira. Because we've seen in Chandler, the Brent Primus fight, the second time around, he seems to tire the longer the fight goes and starts to rack up damage. The first Benson Henderson, the longer the fight goes, he starts to take damage. The both Will Brooks fights, really both Eddie Alvarez fights, but especially the second one, the longer these fights goes, he starts to, accumulate damage. You can hit him, you can hurt him, I think the leg kick's going to be there. Charles Oliveira is going to be able to hurt the leg, but that's going to be something that takes a while to get going. But with Charles, dude, we've always talked about quitter mentality, right? How many times has Charles Oliveira got to quit before you realize this guy's got, he's got that mentality? You look at literally all of these losses. The Donald Cerrone fight, where it's like, stiff jab, topples over. Cub Swanson, what a delayed reaction that was. He got hit.
That was weird.
And then he looked off to the side, and then his legs just melted. It was like, holy shit. The Frank Yeager fight, he looked good. Max Holloway, esophagus tear. What esophagus tear? He's like pointing at the ref, trying to call a timeout. Calls an esophagus tear. The doctor's like, quite literally, nothing happened to you. Anthony Pettis fight, he's winning. He missed weight. Or Anthony Pettis, I think, missed weight. Anyways, he's winning the fight. He gives up a guillotine in the third round. The Ricardo Lamas fight, he quits in the second round. The Paul Felder fight, he is all over Paul Felder. Bad. As soon as Paul Felder pops his head free and starts delivering a little TK or damage with those elbows, he wants no part. So yeah, there's that quitter mentality. But here's the one thing I'll give him a pass. Look at that win streak. Clay Guida in the first. Giagos in the second. Miller in the first. Tamor in the second. Lentz in the second. Gordon in the first. It's the Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson fight where he shows resolve. Because the Kevin Lee fight, it's close. It's actually a really close fight. And in the third, it's Oliveira that's not quitting. It's Lee the one that doesn't want to go no more. In the Tony fight, it's like for the 3 rounds, I wish that was a 5-round fight, but it didn't matter. He was going to keep doing that for 5 rounds. He looked very good in that fight. Charles is coming into his own. Charles is looking really good right now. Charles is the number 1 contender. Whether it was Poirier or Chandler, you know what the fact that remains was? It was going to be against Charles Oliveira. He's earned this spot. He's one of the few guys that would be interesting against Khabib, simply just because at least he's got the intangible of a grappling game. But it's like he deserves to be here. It's just I kind of agree with you. I think for the first round and a half, Chandler's going to be faster. He's going to be more explosive. And with Chandler being out of Sanford MMA with Henry Hoof and all them, they're going to put a proper game plan. Whereas you nailed this. Charles stands very straight up. He's always stood straight up, right? It's his Muay Thai style. It's how he gets off those knees to the body. It's how he likes to chop those elbows. He put an absolute clinic on guys like Nick Lentz, but he always stands very upwards, and he doesn't move his head from side to side. The knockout losses he's had has been because of this, but he does make it work for himself against lower level guys. Now, most people see 8-fight winning streak, but like you're seeing, 8-fight winning streak where it's like 6 of these guys probably should not have been booked in the fight to begin with. The other 2 guys he had favorable matchups with, right? But the last point I'll make here is that Clay Guida, wrestler. Christos Giagos, I should say Clay Guida, not a power puncher. Christos Giagos, not a power puncher. Chim Miller, not a power. These are all wrestlers. David Timur is a striker, albeit he is not a power puncher. Nick Lentz, wrestler. Jared Gordon was moving up from 45. I don't know why. And again, he's 100% a grappler, right? Kevin Lee can strike, is a grappler. Tony Ferguson, it's the same thing. He's well-rounded, he's tricky, but he's not a power puncher. We talked about in his breakdown. Doesn't really go out there and knock these guys out. More so puts volume on these guys. So Charles been able to roll with the punches lately, but Chandler brings that power. He brings that power that's hurt Oliveira in the past, and I think that he's going to be all over him. He's going to be dynamic. He's going to beat him to the punch, and he's going to hurt him early. So same reason I was on Michael Chandler over Hooker, and I saw that Chandler by knockout was like 5-1. It was a big plus money play. They're doing the same thing here, is that you can have Chandler straight up, but Chandler by knockout is plus 195. So I want some of that. My play will be Chandler by knockout, and for the 4th and final time tonight, I'm going to tell you, this is a good live betting opportunity. It is. Because similar to how you can bet both sides, I can bet Michael Chandler right now for plus money. That's a plus money play. Let's just call it $100 for the sake of easy numbers. I have a $100 on Chandler at plus money. After the first round, after the first 3 or 4 minutes, if your book allows you to bet mid-fight or mid-round, it's going to be plus money Charles Oliveira. Chandler's going to win the first round. He's faster. He's got the power. It's the longer this thing extends out. So my plan would be I could bet Chandler plus money now and bet Charles Oliveira plus money after the first round. I've got a plus money bet on both sides. I can't lose money. But I'm just going to balls up and just stick with the Chandler. As much as I'd like to see Charles Oliveira, did you see that thing he races horses like standardbred? Same thing as me. Yeah, dude. This is my spirit animal, right there, Charles Oliveira. I know this is my guy. But I truthfully, my gut tells me that Chandler finds that shot. So I'm going to have to go with Chandler by knockout at plus 195. And again, looking at this one from a live betting standpoint, I think there's a lot of good spots on this card to look at from a live betting standpoint. And even last weekend, there was a lot of good spots as well. These fights have been going the distance. They have been banking in rounds. I have been doing pretty good with these over-unders. And hopefully... Last week we had Harris by submission. Hopefully this week is Giagos by submission. But
that'd be nice.
Yeah, regardless, as much as it's like iffy in this fight and what am I confident in? What I am confident is this card is going to deliver from an entertainment standpoint. Hopefully from a financial standpoint, it does as well.
For sure, this should be chaos. At least the last 2 fights, for sure, I'm very much looking forward to it. Caitlin Chookagian and Araujo might bring it to a screeching halt a little bit, but still, the fight before that, Shane Burgos versus Barboza, should be absolutely bonkers as well. All right, let's get into our 3 best bets, and then we'll lock this thing up. But first and foremost, I do want to announce the cast that I have for tomorrow night. I got 3 guys. One of them you'll definitely be familiar with. We got my guy, Adam Martin, coming in. He's pretty much been working all over the place. I think his main thing right now is the head writer over there at bjpen.com. Shout out to Adam Martin, a very good friend of mine. I've been friends with him close to 10 years now. So he's going to be hopping on the show. And then we have a couple of newbies here. We got MMA experts. His name is AJ. I think he does a couple shows over there on Pub Sports Radio. Solid guy, knows what he's talking about, has a great setup. Very much looking forward to seeing what he has to say about the card. And then lastly, we have my guy, Legs the Capper. You guys know him from the Club and Sub podcast. I did their show last night. Great show, great guys. Good friends of mine as well too, and I'm very much looking forward to bringing them to the table here to break down the fights for you guys. So this goes down tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Me, Adam Martin, AJ, and Legs the Capper. We're going to be going over the card one final time. Not to mention, we'll have the weigh-ins in mind this time. So if any funny business happens on the scales, we'll definitely know about it. Hopefully we have no fights pull out, and we'll be able to break down the fights for you guys one last time. All right, let's get into our 3 best bets here. Let me just pull this thing up. Come on,
baby.
Let's go. All right, there we go. First and foremost, I got Chandler in round one, plus 460. Got to take a shot on that one. I think his explosive striking style is going to be a little bit too much for Oliveira. I don't think Oliveira is going to see those punches coming. Even if Chandler wants to mix it up to the body and then eventually come up to the head, I think that could absolutely be live for him. But Chandler is going to be a bat out of hell in that first round. And I think that Oliveira is going to pay for it. So I got Chandler round one, plus 460. Kind of surprised it's at that crazy number. I thought it would be closer to plus 250, plus 200. But I'll take that round one plus 460, baby, because I do think that's the way that he ends up taking the fight. Next up, I have Chookagian via decision, minus 105. Probably the first time you guys have ever seen a minus or a favorite, slight favorite line on my best props. But I very much do like this spot. I think that Chookagian is a very good spot this weekend. As long as Araujo it doesn't take a grapple-heavy approach and kind of nullifies Chookagian's stand-up game by just planting her on the ground and kind of just keeping her there, I think that Chookagian just stays on her bicycle, sticks and moves throughout the majority of those 15 minutes, gets Viviane Araujo whiffing that air, and then takes home that decision victory, minus 105, me likey. And then lastly, it was tough. I couldn't find one, but I had to go with Lutz via decision plus 190. Again, very scarce card in terms of having ultimate confidence on some of these props. But these are the three that I feel best about. More so the first two that I gave you guys. But in terms of Lutz via decision plus 190, not too bad. I'm expecting that fight to go to a decision. I'm expecting him to have a little bit more versatile of a striking attack than what Aguilar is going to bring to the table. And as long as both of them stay conscious, which I think they will, I think Lutz will at least get the first two rounds here and then pick up that judge's decision at the end of the 15 minutes. All right, Cody, you're up.
All right, hell yeah, you know me. I like to start a little minus 160. I got to start that bankroll off right. We're going with Grundy Vannata. Fight goes the distance, minus 160. Again, I think Grundy's going to use that power wrestling, routinely get this fight to the ground, be able to grind him, grapple him, and hopefully, be enough to get the decision. Vannata is capable. He's a durable enough guy, but I just think it's going to bank some rounds. Well, last couple weeks ago, we talked about Cody Stamen, Rob Dvalishvili. I guaranteed that fight would go the distance. You have the power grappler versus the guy that knows how to grapple, but it's just going to continuously getting out muscled. It'll go to 15. I got a similar opinion here, only I don't got to get it and I'm going 275, which is actually, in my opinion, a good price. When we got a minus 160 here, Grundy Vannata, I'm going to take it. Now it's like, okay, now I need an even money play, right? And then we're going to go with Andrea Lee plus 168. This is a spot that I actually like. I thought about going the Gina Mazany plus 100. That was the other option, but it was even money. This is plus 168. I think that Lee's just going to be able to mix in the wrestling. And when you look at it by the numbers, right? Here's somebody that she is a kickboxer by trait. She is able to keep these fights standing. She does like to throw 2-3, for every one fight that Antonina Shevchenko should throw back. It's that willingness to throw in the wrestling. Now, we do know that she has takedown defense issues, but again, Lauren Murphy's the type of opponent that can expose that. Roxanne Modafferi is the type of opponent that can expose that. Joanne Calderwood is an elite level opponent, great striking, does mix in the grappling as well. They were all capable of doing that. Antonina, I'm not quite sure. So I think this fight's going the distance, which the bookmaker's on the same page. I need to be on one side of it, and I'm going to go with Lee plus 168. Made a lot of sense. And then, Locke always shows, with these big plus money price tags makes me look bad. So I need one as well. Jacare Souza plus 300. And I'm going to agree with DFS by the numbers Brady on this one as well. It's like, if this becomes, Muniz can't strike, right? Jacare is the superior striker. That's the advantage for him. Muniz is wrestling. What wrestling? He's more of a guard puller. Jacare actually can wrestle. We've seen him go out there. It's something he spent a lot of time working on. So you give the wrestling advantage to him as well. Grappling. Have you ever given someone a grappling advantage over Jacare Souza in a fight before? No. Cardio is probably better. He literally has this matchup wherever it should take place. Age is the one thing that it's like, Father Time is undefeated. It does eventually get everybody. Cerrone figured to have advantages over Morono everywhere last week, but it's like durability and age is certainly in question. But it's like Muniz is not going to bring that kind of pace and pressure. What I do think he'll be able to do is use his jiu-jitsu to stay safe. That's why they learn jiu-jitsu. Your first class, it's self-defense. You call the cops and you're like, there's a home burglar just broke into my house. You're Anthony Smith and they say it's going to take us 20 minutes to get there. Can you survive for 20 minutes? This guy's a third-degree BJJ black belt. I just think that he'll be in enough to stay out of harm's way. If he had some Gregor Gillespie, he just knocked out a BJJ world champion third degree last week. But it's like that smothering, break you down, grind you, cause you to quit. all over you, pace, pressure, grind, that breaks you. But Muniz is not going to do that to Cachoeira. Cachoeira is not going to do that to Muniz. I think it's going to be a slower paced grappling match, one that Cachoeira wins over the course of 15. It's 3-1. That seemed too good to be true to me. But we'll know on come Sunday morning if Cachoeira is all the way done or if he had one left.
Especially if he goes out there and gets the finish, that would definitely suck as well. But I do like that plus 300 price tag. Not the round 3 props you're looking for me at least. Plus 460, on the lighter end compared to the props that I normally give out. But again, very, very tough card. I'm very much looking forward to it and seeing how it plays out. In terms of unofficial tracked or untracked bets and unofficial bets from my side, gonna be very late. I don't want to have much action on this card. I just want to sit back, smoke a J, and just fucking chill out and watch these fights, man. I don't want to have too much financially invested. So obviously, it's nice when you're able to hit PRPs and you're able to hit these crazy parlays, but I think it's going to be very scarce in terms of winnings for this weekend. In terms of if people are trying to parlay spots together, try to find those spots that you're confident in, fire on those. Otherwise, just sit back. There's much better spots next weekend. I can't wait to get into the card for next weekend with you, Cody. Next week, when we got Garbrandt and Font fighting in the main event, a ton of other great spots. Not to mention the return of motherfucking Damir Ismagulov. That's my dark horse of the division right there. So I can't wait to see him return to the cage. But yeah, appreciate everybody checking out the stream as always. Cody, I'll give you the platform on the back end here, and then I'll wrap things up on the end.
Yeah, at CJ Saftic on Twitter, as always, working to put some additional content and some shows together in the near future, so bear with me. If you want to see more, hit me up on Twitter and just let me know kind of what you'd like to see or if it's something that you'd support. And yeah, definitely always trying to grow the brand and keep things going in the right direction. And yeah, I mean, I just got to say I love all the support and everyone that takes the time to come out here on Thursday, check it out. And of course, on Friday, if you want any of the post-weigh-in thoughts, hit lock, kick up the gang. And eventually, see, he's getting all these cool different guys together, different guys you might not have heard of, different cappers, different people from the community. Eventually, it's all going to lead into a blood sport style tournament where we need a cap off. You tell me who the 28 best guys in the world are, and we'll have a cap off. But until then, tune into the show, support his stuff, and yeah, always good times on the way.
I think once I get through at least one go through of the pool of guys that I have, I'm going to put out a poll out there and see what people like the most. I know you're going to be probably number one because people fucking love you and they want you on every week. Is there not a week that goes by that people mention in the chat, where the fuck is Cody Saftic? I'm like, hey, it's not in my control. If I could have him on every week, I would love to have him on every week, but we'll eventually work something out that we can hopefully do that Ultimate Weigh-In show as a permanent thing. But for now, you guys should be more than happy with this Propping You Up show because we give you guys 2 hours for free every fucking week that you guys can depend on every Thursday evening. So we appreciate you guys checking out. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Once again, me, Adam Martin, AJ from MMA Experts, and then Legs the Capper from Club and Sub Podcast. Hope you guys join us tomorrow night. Good luck on your bets. Good luck on your props. Good luck on your DraftKings, as Cody's repping DraftKings over there. And hopefully you guys are able to win some money. Enjoy the fights and obviously gamble responsibly, please.